I think it's probably largely forgotten by people below a certain age that there was a time that seeing a video clip on a home electronic device, a digitized clip, was a novelty.
You're going to get to know a lot about me, maybe even more than you imagine.
The big promise of CD-ROM was that it had an amazing amount of memory capacity compared to a cartridge. And then the question was, what do you actually fill that memory with?
It felt like it was kind of limitless when we came to CD-ROM. It was so much storage for that time. You know, hard drives alone were usually just in like the tens of megabytes in the 80s. And here came like this little plate, and it was giving you 650 megabytes of data. And that was a lot at that time.
A good friend of our family was always really up on the latest technology. And he showed me a CD-ROM drive for the first time. No games at the time, but it was an old CD-ROM drive that you loaded with a caddy system. So you actually put the disc in this plastic tray, close the flap, slide that thing in, and it seemed like infinite data. So just the fact that you could cram it full of stuff, immediately in my head, I'm like, oh man, games.
I only saw that medium as music, and I just didn't understand how it worked. So it just didn't make any sense to me. It felt like when my friend showed it to me and put the CD in there, I just didn't believe him that it was games and it was going to work.
When I first encountered CD-ROMs, I was deeply skeptical on console. They were slow. They were slow to load. The FMV effects did not impress me after the first few minutes, especially since my first exposure to FMV was in the arcade with Laserdisc, where they'd actually been better done than some of the early examples there. I was very sensitive to loading times. Even though I used PCs quite a bit and was used to them in that space, I thought of consoles as an instantaneous place to play video games, and I separated those in my mind.
But certainly the game industry was ready for the jump that a cheaper medium would provide.
The memory inside cartridges is very restrictive. It's very expensive to kind of upgrade that. CDs opened this whole world of possibilities for really, really nice renders and even videos.
All the magazines had hyped up that you could have CD music and anime cutscenes.
I think it's kind of natural that that's the direction that it went, that all of a sudden when people realized that they could have hyper-realistic stuff, well, what's more hyper-realistic than pointing a video camera at someone? So, you know, you can get the best graphics on a CD that way.
So like video in the game space started with Laserdisc, right? And then it kind of went away for a while. And then now with the advent of CD-ROM, it was like, we can do this at home. And that's kind of what kicked things off.
Plumbers Don't Wear Ties does not have a lot of actual motion, the motion part of full motion video in it. It tends to be a lot of stills, but you're still accomplishing that same kind of like, the graphics are these real people. They are not pixels, it's real people acting out a scene.
A full motion video game is a game that endeavors to use motion picture footage to tell video game stories and integrate into gameplay directly as opposed to simple cinematics.
To me, at the basest core, I feel like a full motion video game is something that gives me control over something that feels like it could have been a movie or a television show.
The video game industry hasn't always been something that's huge or taken seriously, and I think especially in this kind of like early 90s period, it was a time when people were like, well, what is serious? What is real entertainment? And the answer was Hollywood. So what if we just made video games like Hollywood? Then it'll be serious. Then it'll be like the real deal.
How can we display more advanced graphics than could realistically be done in real time? That was the idea.
Dragon's Lair, Mach 3, games like that, I saw that they were beautiful, but I also instantly recognized there was something different about them. And I was also really in at a young age to movies and was aware of the existence of Laserdisc. So how these games worked was not really a mystery to my little kid mind. I was like, oh, they're playing video clips. Okay. And even the idea of video clips was kind of a strange thing back then, but my head could wrap around it. I watched Dragon's Lair on demo mode over and over, and I was like, I get it. It's the same thing every time. Okay, they're just switching around the order.
It's limited in the sense that, I mean, you can only do as much as you filmed. So you don't get the full sense of exploration that you get out of a game that's completely interactive. You know, you're basically funneled down a director's path in almost the same way a movie would, but then you have these branching paths that will allow you to see other takes that the director has come up with. So it's not as experimental or freeform as regular games would be. It's more guided, and I feel like that's a limitation of it. But I also feel like that opens up the game in terms of its accessibility.
Everyone's really kind of on a level playing field. Whether you're deeply into games or whether you're just, you know, someone's uncle, like my uncle, who had some games like that, like Mad Dog McCree on the computer.
Especially in the PC space, developers and publishers were always looking at how can we expand this out? How can we get dad playing video games and mom playing video games? Or, you know, anybody really. And there was many different types of genres and types of games, and I think FMV is just one of those things because it was usually not that complex, and it was designed to be like, hey, you like watching movies? How about you play one?
They called it Sillywood, the Silicon Valley and Hollywood coming together. Like, what if you could just be in a movie? What if it was a movie that you could play?
That's what I love about this era, because it was so experimental, right? Like, nobody knew. Like, this end goal of just getting people onto your screen, just seeing full color, or even just 256 colors representing people on a computer. That was nuts. Heck, even just still frames, right? Just a still picture. It sounds silly, but honestly, for that period, that was not a trivial thing to do on these machines, right? So all of this stuff was kind of coming together, and it just, you know, it created the FMV genre.
When you had CD-based consoles, at least that early, this was like the only type of game that you couldn't get on a cartridge.
So FMV was really a chance for people to say, look, we have all this space. Let's really put it to use with something you can't do in any other format. And FMV, you know, while it wasn't always great in terms of gameplay, it made use of the potential of that medium in a way that traditional games really couldn't.
FMV on consoles was the realization of that dream. The problem was it was a very clunky realization. It was a very limited realization. Some of that had to do with budgets.
You're kind of limited by the logistics and the realities of the actual cost of creating these things, especially if you're filming real actors and real sets.
The reality of it was that a lot of these games just weren't actually very fun. So if video games aren't fun and the production values aren't Hollywood level, then you just are kind of pushing buttons to a bad movie, which is not really what I think anyone had in mind.
You know, once you've gotten the entire story, then there's nothing else. And that's one of the good things about Night Trap is that you can play through it several times and always see like some new stuff.
Night Trap is so honest about what it is that it's one of the best.
They took the concept of using security cameras and they plugged it into the game itself, where you would actually be watching something that happens that you don't have direct control over. You just had control over the feeds.
Developers, as often happens, saw an example of success in, say, Seventh Guest, in Night Trap, and these kinds of games that do use FMV in an interesting way, but kind of only got the video part of it, and therefore we quickly go into a realm of kind of very loose, like quick time-based video gaming. And so the games themselves became more limited in its genre than it actually needed to be.
It's good to go back and reevaluate and kind of understand what those games were about and what they could be, what people tried to make of them.
Even though we have so many more genres of games now and so much more technology to do this in a full 3D space, I think there's still the sense of that realism and the fact that our eyes connect with these characters in a different way, the fact that we know they're real. I think this can be used effectively still to this day.
Like most of the universe, my first exposure to Plumbers as anything but a legend I'd read about in places was James Rolfe on The Angry Video Game Nerd, dissecting it, and then just being like, well?
Saw that episode, didn't believe that there was any way that this game was actually real, then had to track down a copy of it and play it, and yeah, it's worse than that video would lead you to believe.
This isn't a game that was particularly well advertised, well regarded. It only became this weird cult classic really through the sort of YouTube zeitgeist. Like, it took on a life of its own by being such a bad game featured in this very popular YouTube channel.
I subscribe to something called Electronic Entertainment, E2, by the way, not E3. And then this magazine, and many other PC gaming magazines of the era, you'd flip through, you find all your normal games, no problem. Then you get to the back. You get to the back and you're going to start to find a whole selection of adult CD-ROMs. You'll see titles, you'll see advertisements. I actually got in trouble at school once for that, for having one of those magazines. They thought I brought in a smut magazine, but it was actually just for PC gaming. So in one of those issues, I saw something on this game once, and I just thought it was another one of those silly, sexual FMV games, right?
I do certainly remember that someone did a preview. It was not a review, but it was a preview. And I remember looking at the pictures, and I was really excited because I was like, well, I recognize that lady. She's a wrestler. And that kind of gave me a little bit of a wrong idea.
It's funny thinking about seeing it in a magazine, because you probably saw like this still screenshot of the game, and in your mind you're thinking, oh, this is all like moving video. but like what you're seeing in that screenshot is literally what you get in the game.
Plumbers was kind of ingrained into my mind around the early thousands as like this terrible game, the worst game of all time, as people would say. And it created this curiosity in me to play it and experience it. And I had that chance when I walked into kind of a glorified pawn shop in this area. It was a recycle shop, basically, and they had a 3DO with a bunch of games. I had no idea what the games were, but the lot for this thing was only $100. So I bought it with company money at the time, because I didn't have my own money. I just started Mighty Rabbit, my development company, and managed to convince my co-founder to spend $100 on this 3DO, because I was like, it's such a good deal, we got to get it. Anyways, we were flipping through the games, and Plumbers Don't Wear Ties was one of them. And I kind of instantly got excited, not only because it's a very expensive game, it was worth a lot of money even at the time, but because it was this game I'd heard so much about that was almost mythical at this point. And it became this kind of running tradition in the office. When we'd hire a new employee, we would make them play Plumbers Don't Wear Ties. And I feel like that's almost abusive in a sense that we would make employees do that. But to us, when we were like a group of like 5 or whatever people, we thought it was funny. I don't do that now. I certainly don't make my new employees do that, but at the time.
You make them produce it now.
Yeah, now I'm making my employees make Plumbers Don't Wear Ties. So, that's a full circle.
The internet was in its infancy. People weren't just browsing this kind of light adult style content. So putting it on CD-ROM was probably seemed like good business at the time, but without a lot of money behind it.
I feel like that's the question, is how did this happen? Because at the time that it happened, it represents a giant step back in technology on a system touted as being more capable than what came before it, right? This game came out on 3DO.
To fully understand how something like this happens on a console, you need to look at the console industry as a whole. Up until the mid-'80s or so, consoles are pretty open-ended. After that point going forward, console manufacturers actually implemented systems to essentially require developers to adhere to their standards in order to publish the games. The 3DO, though, was a very different beast. So this was the brainchild of Trip Hawkins, who was the founder of Electronic Arts. Rather than just building a box called the 3DO box, they actually built a standard. And companies like Panasonic, Sanyo, and the like, they would then build boxes to the specification. But along with that, they essentially left it wide open. You didn't have to have the 3DO seal of quality. That was not a requirement on that. If you had the manufacturing capabilities, you could publish on 3DO. And that meant the wide variety of quality in terms of what appeared on the system was, it was interesting.
You get opportunists coming in and saying, okay, well, what do we need to make a video game? Well, there's no requirements that you have to really meet other than the fact that it has to run on the console. You have to be able to plug in a controller and make a choice, at least to start the game. And I guess that's it. So you look at Plumbers, and yeah, it is the bare basics of a video game, but a video game nonetheless.
Plumbers' format is very strange. The fact that you're getting these stills with what I've heard described before as sort of a radio drama.
Oh, kiss me, Jeanne. Kiss me as if it were the last time.
Did they only do it this way because they didn't understand how to get it to work with video? So they just said, let's just use photographs. It makes you wonder if they have some sort of video master of this stuff and they're just like pulling selects out of each one.
I feel like they had no ability to capture full motion footage, digitize it, and figure out the technological component in actually making that full motion video run on the platform. It's a lot easier to just display an image or whatever.
The video codecs of that era were extremely rudimentary, huge in terms of file size. You couldn't get a lot of video in there. So it's entirely possible that they just at some point deemed that, okay, we can't do this on one disc. And by going with still shots, it basically allows them to tell something that's a little bit longer and has different branches. If you try to do it all with video, I'm not sure it would have actually been feasible on that single disc.
I would think that moving from still frame to still frame could be a beautiful way to make a video game. I mean, that's what Myst is. Myst is just a series of still images stapled together, and they're stapled together in a compelling way that made it one of the most successful video games of all time. So Plumbers doesn't commit a crime just by using that format. It could have been a very effective kind of storytelling game.
They kind of just went with the easiest route possible to produce this game on as little money as they possibly could. And I feel like that lends a lot to its charm because it's just so obviously low budget.
Even though it's a low budget game, you still need to be able to develop for this platform. And that was still a taller bar to cross compared to building a game for the PC at that era. So the developers of Plumbers Don't Wear Ties obviously had to climb enough of a ladder to get over that hump to actually be able to program 3DO software to get this released on the system, even if technologically it's rather anemic.
So the format just comes off as cheap. It's just another way to signal to you, oh, we didn't want to spend money on this, but you bought it. Ha ha. Wow, I didn't know things got worse than the holiday special. But they do. And it's Plumbers Don't Wear Ties.
Man, I really don't know if it's the worst, but it's really, really, really far down there.
You have to steel yourself for this game when you play it, right? But it's certainly not something you're going to forget.
There is no contemporaries. There is no comparisons. It's just that bad.
Plumbers really is just as bad as everyone says it is. It's garbage. It is a grease fire. It is the worst of all worlds.
This game is always going to be remembered for being what it is, which is this extremely bad example of 1990s full motion video excess.
It was probably always meant to be a campy, weird game. I don't think anyone who was sitting in on those storyboard meetings was like, yes, a beautiful, flawless work of art that will color people's cultural ideas for the future. It's a campy game. You can have fun with camp, right?
The goofiness factor and the unexpected appearances, like a certain chicken man, it does result in something that's perhaps a little bit more memorable in a really dumb way, right? Like, make no mistake, it's not good, but it's not good in a way that is good.
I'm giving it too much credit, but in a way, I guess you could accidentally say that it is the first American-produced visual novel.
This style of game wasn't actually unheard of at the time, maybe in the US, but that was something that had been explored a lot on the Japanese side, where it was much more about still images, about reading, about audio, sound novels was what they called them in Japan. So in a way, it was almost a little bit ahead of its time, although it probably ended up being that way just because of budgetary constraints, is my guess.
Most of those adult games of the era, they didn't really try. At least what I've seen, by the way. I haven't gone through all of them. Let's make that clear right now. But the ones I've looked at, they tended to be either more like cyber or more serious. And this one was just kind of goofy. But then, some of the other stuff in there, like the abuse from the boss, for instance, it's pretty bad, right?
It is probably not the way we would depict women in very many scenarios today. it treads into some kind of strange and uncomfortable territory sometimes. But the fact that that she had a good time working on this game and that was very comfortable the entire time, it shows just kind of how inherently capitalistic this all was. Like they were just trying to make something that they thought would sell, and they thought that putting a woman in these kinds of situations could sell, and maybe not a reflection of the moral values of the people involved in the project. I think nowadays, at the very least, there's an entire genre that's just meant to sort of positively portray those kinds of relationships, which is the otome genre. It's visual novels for women, essentially, or at least that's how it started. And this is very popular in Japan, and it's basically just kind of woman-forward romance. Just really kind of sweet. I mean, sometimes goes into raunchier territory, but we have genres that kind of put this stuff into maybe a better context now that we, at least in the United States, didn't really have at the time.
You can go back and play the best games of all time over and over and over, and they're always going to age super well. But 9 times out of 10, the story behind them isn't anywhere near as interesting as these horrible left turns and these train wrecks that we come across.
It's really okay, I think, to take something truly awful and mock it. Look at it and say, this is the worst we ever got to.
People always remember the greatest games of all time. They're always going to remember the worst games of all time as well. Nobody's going to remember a game that was somewhere in the middle. Those are the games that fade into obscurity, but being the best of the worst is almost as good as being the best of the best in terms of being remembered.
It is zany, it is baffling, and it's just, it's Plumbers Don't Wear Ties.
What always strikes me is that the plumber wears a tie. And it colors the rest of the game for me, because it's literally the title, and why is he wearing a tie?
There's this part where he's playing his plunger like a guitar. Even though it's done with just a few frames, you know what's going on. You know he's just wailing on that plunger, and you're like, what am I even doing? But you can't stop. That's the point where it grabs you, and you're just like, I need to see where this is going.
The mother, she's got the makeup on, like the green makeup, and she's got this big smile. It's the creepiest image, and I think the reason why it sticks out to me is because it's the image that I was using for testing for some of the upscaling stuff. So it's the one that, I think of plumbers, that's the first one that pops up.
The most potentially problematic scene, just because we have to think about how we portray or contextualize that scene in 2022, that's the scene that first comes to mind. And it probably wasn't what I would answer if you asked me before we started working on this.
The opening credits feel like someone just got MS Paint and was like, let's just throw whatever we got in there, whatever stock photos we can get, throw some race cars in there, and then we will invert the colors.
The title screen is unbelievable that somebody put that together and just thought, yeah, let's ship that.
The first time I played it, what really got me was the host guy. You would make a decision and you would just come out and be like, well, I'm taking 29 million points off your score. And I'm like, where did this arbitrary number come from? What the hell?
The chase scene across Hollywood, just this walking, lazy, just whimsical sort of lollygagging about chase, if you want to even call it a chase. It looks absolutely ridiculous and completely full of non sequitur scenes. It's bizarre and I guess maybe funny.
Seeing a man in a striped suit wearing a chicken mask, it speaks to me in ways that it probably shouldn't. I don't know what it is about it, but people sometimes see holy spirits in their coffee foam and in the clouds, but I see a man in a chicken mask and I kind of feel like that's my religion.
What have I done? What have I done? Oh, God. Oh, no, what have I done? I think my first impression of CD-based games wouldn't really be games, but they were more like computer softwares, like a movie catalog. And you would look up movies on there, it would give you some information, and every now and then it would have a clip they would actually include like a little clip, very low resolution, but it was a clip from the film. And it was like, wow, I'm watching a movie on a CD. Even CDs, for that matter, were kind of new. Just the idea of listening to music on a new medium was kind of interesting, because on a video game cartridge, there's a chip inside, or on an audio cassette, there's tape inside of it, but you don't handle it. You don't actually touch the tape. The CD was just, you're touching the data, so it seemed. So CDs kind of had a negative impression, sort of, between me and my friends when they first came out, because we thought you could scratch them real easily and then the game wouldn't play, or the music. I didn't know how far CDs would go. It was sort of a big question at that point. With the 3DO, I only knew the commercials. This is flying. This is real flying. All those childish games, we're all done with that now. Now we're going into real games. Yeah, I didn't know anybody who had a 3DO. I guess it was just too expensive. And I didn't really get a taste of it other than those commercials, not until I started doing the nerd videos. So I never heard of Plumbers Don't Wear Ties until the fans requested it. So I had to try it out, and it was so bizarre. And I didn't think it was possible to make a video of it, because what am I going to do with this? Most of the games I would review, I would be able to change the course of action by playing the game. There's many variables to what I can do and what I can show happen. Plumbers Don't Wear Ties, it's pretty much just a bunch of images that you're going to see no matter what. I can't really change the outcome of the game a whole lot. You'd make these choices for the characters, and then that was about it. I didn't think it was going to make a very good episode, but I tried anyway. It's basically just a basic sort of reaction video, almost. I'm just going through it and being like, what the hell is this? That kind of thing. Like, there wasn't really a whole lot in my commentary other than just explaining what I'm seeing, as if I need like confirmation. Like, hey, is this what's happening? Are you seeing what I'm seeing? The panda head in the bedroom, the guy playing guitar with the plunger. There's all those weird filters, and the guy with the chicken head. And then there's that really weird, like uncomfortable scene in the office where the boss, this real sleazy boss, tells her to take her clothes off. And then she like surprises all of us, but she actually does it. But she has like a whip and handcuffs, and she's like, okay, if I'm going to take my clothes off, I'm going to do this to the point where you're not even going to be able to handle it. I don't know what the point of the whole thing was, but it's such a weird game. The voices in it were really peculiar. Like, who do you think should make the first move? Press A now. I don't think the game was really meant to be seen by that many people. I think it was kind of just like an experiment. Like, they even put an outtake in there just to show that they weren't that serious. An outtake that's in it. So it's an intake, not an outtake. I guess it's in there just to show you that they're having fun with it and that it's not really meant to be taken serious. I mean, how could it be taken serious? But the fan response was overwhelmingly positive. Even to this day, a lot of people say, oh yeah, I remember your Plumbers Don't Wear Ties episode. I really like that. Or, like sometimes even like that was the first one they saw. Like your Plumbers Don't Wear Ties episode was the one that introduced me to your work. And that's pretty amazing. And yeah, I don't know, that this game sort of has a legacy that's very special and very one of a kind. And I'm really happy to be attached to it in some kind of way. So yeah, I'm honored.
Hi, I'm Jeanne Basone, aka Hollywood, from the original Gorgeous Ladies of Rustling. It was a TV show in the 80s. At a young age, I knew I wanted to do acting. I knew that, and I kept saying to Mom and Dad, I want to do this. I'd like to model. I'd like to give out Academy Award. I want to pose in Playboy. These are things that a 12-year-old, what am I thinking? I want to, what am I thinking? And my parents would just look at me and just keep moving on. So I figured, well, after high school, I'll do what I want to do. I got with an agency, And I just did one thing of extra work, the people that walk around in the background or they're sitting at the table. And then I went back to my regular job, which was drawing blood. That is a phlebotomist. That's not what I wanted to do. I'm sure that's what my parents would like me to do. So there just happened to be an audition. And I went home and I checked that audition. It was a sports TV show. I went after work. I got to the audition. There's probably 500 different ladies there. And this man, David McLean, says, this show is going to be about women's wrestling. And I didn't know much about wrestling. I knew every other sport, but I'm like, oh boy. And I saw about 20 girls leave their seats and walk out the door. And I'm thinking, oh no, what do those chicks know that I don't know? But I'm young, you know, no fear. Went down to the audition. I went to the audition, which really was training. Mondo Guerrero was our trainer, and Mondo trained us Monday, Wednesdays, and Friday nights, so I could work and then train at night. As I kept going back, I noticed that there was less and less women, and they were weeding down 12 ladies. They wanted 12 girls to do a pilot. That's all they needed, and they had characters for each girl. So at the end of the day, I was one of the girls that they picked, and they called my character Hollywood. My tag team partner was Vine, and we did a pilot. We took it to syndication to NAPI in 1986, and at the end of January, they called and said, pack your bags, you're going to Vegas. And so I did the pilot and all 4 seasons of that show. And that's when I figured at that point, I'd like to do more TV shows or more acting. Stunt work was another thing that I got into after Glow ended, and one of my friends said, let's go on a set and I'll show you how you hustle a set. And all that means is you're going down to a set to give them your picture and resume and meet with the coordinator. So I started doing a lot of that. And then wrestling, I started my own company, Hollywood Productions. And so main thing was stunt work, some modeling, some acting, and then the wrestling. The wrestling I've done from day one. I never stopped. There was a restaurant that we used to work at noontime. It was a lunch lingerie show. And Michael used to be one of the patrons that would have lunch there and check out the show. I knew him probably quite a few times before he had asked about doing the game. And he lived in the area as well. And he came up to me and asked if I'd be interested in doing a video game. And I'm like, hell yeah, let's do it. Plumbers Don't Wear Ties. Okay, whatever. Sounded off the wall to me, but he wanted Jane to be like the lingerie show, and she was. And then I got to meet John, which is Edward. I'd never met him before, a model. I don't know where Michael found him, but we got along very well. Oh, and then Paul Thrusher, he was a friend of mine. And I thought, oh my gosh, I have the perfect guy, sleazebag looking type of guy to be the boss. And Paul, he was perfect for the part. Poor Paul, you're not a sleazebag, you know, but he was perfect. What I remember is just 1 or 2, maybe 3 trips to do this. I mean, look at it. You get what you put into it, I guess. There was a little video and then a series of stills through the game. We were definitely acting out the scenes, because as you can see, some of them look like he might have taken stills possibly off of the video and then camera shooting. There was no pre-production that I remember at all. Just show up on Sunday, 9 a.m. And the reason we did the weekends because everybody had jobs, plus I think Michael had a building that he worked at that was not going to have a lot of people around. And it was just Michael doing everything. I never had a bad experience through the whole thing. This was fun. He had my consent to say, yes, I'm going to kiss Edward now. Yes, you know, take off your clothes. I just, you know, now looking at it, I cringe a little bit because it's different. But everybody on set made you feel comfortable. It's a script. I'm following a script for a game. So I didn't see anything wrong with it when I was shooting it then. For the most part, we had fun, and I think everything went really smoothly. So I'm thinking the first day that we shot might have been in that parking lot at first. The footage of me driving, that's my car. However, when you cut back to the outside scenes there in Glendale, that blue car, I have no idea whose car that is. So we shot all the parking lot scenes first, and then we went into the building, and then, of course, running through the streets like we did. And I don't think that we had permits for any of the places. I think we were just like Ed Wood, on the run, let's go do it, quick. The interesting things is I love all the places that we went to. So I'm wondering, did I say, let's go to Alvaro Street, let's go to Grauman's, the observatory, and those are like some of my favorite places to go to. So I'm wondering if I had any input in any of where we went. I'm pretty sure it was my idea to lay down across the tracks with the train. I know it was my idea. I'm like, that's the damsel in distress part right there. We're doing that. I think Michael let us go with the flow. He gave us a lot of space to do what we wanted to do. I think that's what made the shoot so fun, is letting us do what we want to do. Hey, may I suggest this? And I probably didn't say it as nice as that. I probably said, we're going here, let's do this, blah, blah, blah. And then here's another question. Did he tell us what I should wear? Did I pick out? Because those are obviously my clothes. There's no wardrobe, there's no hair, there's no makeup. I mean, look at it. We're just like, get out of the shower, throw a little makeup on, go. It was a great experience. The only thing I was trying to figure out was, how are they going to put all of that into a game? And I never saw the game. You know, people finish with certain projects and people move on. That's going to be something that never will happen. That's exactly what I thought. Oh, well, we shot it. That's it. I never saw the game until the internet got popular and I started getting those emails. And I'm like, what? Where? You saw this where? So I wasn't aware of the YouTube Angry Video Nerd guy. And I clicked on that. I was horrified at first. I'm like, oh my gosh, what is this? But he was so funny because basically he's saying these things, we're thinking them, but he's saying them out loud. If you listen to the language that he's using, and it's so funny, I had to laugh. So that was probably my first indication that this thing that we did in 1993 is this game. Either people love it or they hate it or they think it's funny. And you have fan clubs of Jeanne. And then I looked at the views. I'm like, this game is in the millions. People are actually checking this shit out. I'm sorry. But yeah, I hadn't thought about it in years. So to see this coming back up and to have somebody remember that, that's cool. So I'm getting a new set of fans that I love. And I can't wait really to meet them and talk to them all about and answer their questions, because I'm sure they're going to have a lot of questions. If you ask me would I do it again? Absolutely yes. Of course. It was fun. No regrets. You can always say no to any situation that you're in. Stand your ground. I had to do that a few times during the 80s and early 90s. And I just, walk and go to the next audition, the next gig. But never be afraid to say no. Stand up for who you are. I always did that. Have an open mind, but I think you're going to have fun when you play the game, and you're going to go, oh, that's not so bad. What, they're saying this, they're saying that? I've seen way more than that. I think you'll love it.
I started trying to find the rights for Plumbers Don't Wear Ties back in 2016. And I thought that it was with whoever owned Kieran Entertainment, which was the publisher on 3DO. So I looked up Kieran Entertainment. I went through all of these records with the California Secretary of State. I found all of these business records that were associated with Kieran Entertainment. It was like Digital Stuff Incorporated and all these weird things I've never heard of. And I tried everything I could in my power to reach out to these people. I signed up for white pages. I got phone numbers. I cold called those phone numbers. I sent mail to the registered address of these companies, and the registered address of like whatever their most recent company was is actually just a random empty plot of land on the side of a highway. there is no mailbox there. There is nothing to actually receive mail. So of course, my mail came back like 2 months later as undeliverable because there was nowhere to put it. Like, I almost feel like these people don't exist. I don't know, but I could not get in touch with these people. So after 4 years of trying that, I wrote to our lawyer and I said, hey, you know, what recommendations do you have to figuring out who has the rights? And he was like, did you search the copyright database? And I guess I was just really stupid and I never searched the copyright database. I'd always searched the trademark database, which doesn't really provide you with a lot of information. But the copyright database will have emails occasionally. So I was able to find the copyright for Plumbers Don't Wear Ties. And then there was this name on it for the guy who had started United Pictures, which was the developer of the game. And clicked on his name, and I got some other things like a diet program he had developed. So I clicked on that, and then boom, his email address was there for this diet program copyright. And I was like, holy shit, I've got the way to contact whoever has the copyright. So I emailed him and he was like, wow, I'm surprised anyone is interested in this. And, you know, within a couple weeks, you know, it was all negotiated and done. And we were able to pick up the rights to restore and remaster Plumbers Don't Wear Ties. And I felt this weight lifted off my shoulders. I felt this, you know, 4 years of effort just finally coming together.
We believe we can contextualize this game in an interesting way that will make it not only like the best way to consume the game, but to understand what it was, how it could have happened. We found that idea super fascinating.
So I discovered Plumbers at work. It was something that was floating around at the time, and Joe, he basically was like, hey, you want to know what this is? And he sent me the link to a video by Angry Video Game Nerd that I thought was very funny, very well made. And I was intrigued. I was like, if this is something that we're bringing back, I want to be a part of it.
When you look at a game like this, it's easy to assume from an outside perspective that, well, it is just still images. It is just audio files being played back. You know, that seems like basically 2 lines of code. However, there's so much more to it because the actual timing of the audio and images is somewhat finicky. The tools back then were much more in line of doing some operations like this in terms of FMV gaming, in terms of audio playback. Nowadays, these engines are much more about pushing polygons and allowing for much bigger games. When you actually have to scale it down to something this simple, it leads to a lot of interesting challenges that you don't foresee.
Top level, when you're looking at what you need to do, it's pretty straightforward. But actually coding it out was a little bit difficult because Unity doesn't necessarily have like a timer function. You have to build all of that from scratch and make sure that things flow correctly into each other. So there was a little bit of headache of making sure that, okay, this scene needs to follow up after this scene. And sometimes you mess up. So you got to really go and figure out, okay, what broke.
There's some fan assets and sites that show a lot of the differences between the 3DO and the PC version, and then include information about like the timestamps and stuff like that. Things that made it super useful for us to very quickly break apart the game and rebuild it exactly how it was, right down to like the millisecond of how these things are timed out.
We were given a lot of assets from the older title, even lots of code too, but it was very difficult to understand how to implement that in something like GameMaker or Unity, so we had to start from scratch. One of the biggest and most difficult things that we had to figure out was allowing the player to essentially skip through some of the scenes, just so that they don't have to sit through one that they've maybe already seen. They can just skip right to the decision part of it, or just skip to the next scene. That was a little bit difficult, trying to get that to work with the timer, making sure that when we did skip, we reset the timer.
We made a decision early on that, like, obviously we never wanted to try and approach this game by just putting it back out exactly as it was. We don't think there's a lot of value in that package, even if you remaster like the photos and the one video that's in there. So it basically became like, well, what can we do to create a value around this? And the value we thought that made the most sense was playing it very straight, contextualizing and telling a story about how this game exists, finding the right people who would have something meaningful to say about it, and maybe using it to make a living history piece as opposed to just a remastered version of an old game.
You shouldn't spend money on that original version because it's hundreds of dollars and very hard to seek out. But with this limited run version, it is as easy as either downloading it digitally or preferably buying it physically to own in your own collection as this curiosity in video games. And I think that's the legacy it leaves behind, is that it's one of the biggest curiosities, especially in the Western hemisphere of video gaming. It's kind of like crazy that something like this happened. It's even crazier that it was brought back in 2022.
I like doing unexpected things, and I feel like providing a remaster to this level of Plumbers Don't Wear Ties is a very unexpected thing. So that's really what has always been on my mind with regards to Plumbers Don't Wear Ties. But you know, if this is successful, I would love to be able to look into doing more with it. You know, if there ends up being demand for a sequel, a Plumbers Still Don't Wear Ties, you know, we could do that. Because I actually, you know, I was reading while I was researching the IP on Google that there was actually plans for a second Plumbers Don't Wear Ties, and some assets may actually exist for that floating around in the ether. But you know, this kind of goes hand in hand with trying to find the IP. A lot of the people that worked on the game are kind of like lost to time. Even the people that I have found from that game, like they don't list United Pictures on their resume. So it's like, how do you find these people? You can't really. So I don't know if stuff for Plumbers Don't Wear Ties 2 will ever turn up, but you know, if there's a possibility to make a second one and you know, the business warrants it, I would certainly do it. Again, I think that would be super unexpected.
Plumbers Don't Wear Ties returning is an example of how YouTube culture and memes can manifest themselves into a real thing.
I think the most common question when seeing that Plumbers Don't Wear Ties is coming back is why? Why on earth?
Like, to me, that's almost more enjoyable than getting to release this project. Just knowing that there are people out there thinking, why are they wasting their time doing this?
If you're just purely happy that Plumbers Don't Wear Ties is coming back, I think we need to have a conversation, because you shouldn't just feel happy. You should have questions, and you should be asking those questions. I ask myself questions every day while I'm working on this project, and I will for the rest of my life.
I think the project is very interesting from this perspective of who else would bother remastering the worst game of all time to the level that we are trying to remaster it, in terms of adding all these extras and these exclusives and these, you know, bonus features.
One of my favorite things about limited run games is that it seems that they have this ability to bring back things that shouldn't exist. And I don't mean that in a bad way.
Somebody somewhere thought, like, what is the silliest game we could ever think of, like, releasing on modern platforms? And for the longest time, that was probably Night Trap. And like, what's even sillier than Night Trap is Plumbers Don't Wear Ties, because, you know, like, it's like, that is like really hitting the bottom of the barrel.
There's no cash grab in Plumbers Don't Wear Ties. This is actually one of the hardest jobs we could possibly give ourselves, because we now have to give you a reason to buy the worst game ever made.
The whole time I'm thinking to myself, are we really putting this out? Like, who is asking for this?
I think it's really important to kind of recontextualize games that maybe culturally up until this point have only been the butt of a joke. You know, like everyone knows Plumbers Don't Wear Ties, but does anyone actually know Plumbers Don't Wear Ties?
How many people really know the bad games or have had a chance to play them? And I feel like from a historical perspective, somebody needs to be making these historically bad games accessible again, so people can satisfy that curiosity that they have in understanding why these games are so bad.
That's why I really like to see projects like these, is to sort of recontextualize things and put them in a different space than just, haha, this is stupid.
You know, it's funny, it's weird. There's a lot of bad stuff in it, though. You know, there's stuff that hasn't aged very well, and I think people can learn a lot from sort of the bad that is in there, and just making sure that they don't try to replicate it.
I mean, that's why I support publishing it. You know, we're making this game readily available again. And I think we should, because it's important. Remember the bad parts of your history. Just remember them in context. And I think this is a good context to engage this game.
When you go to a museum, not everything there would have been considered high art at the time of its release. We understand this, and Plumbers is certainly not high art, but it's a part of our culture, right? And it represents something that was really unusual for the console space.
Anything that brings us closer to all video games of all history being available, I think is a very noble effort, even when it results in the release of the worst video games.
There's a strong argument for the preservation of the worst games ever made being just as important as the best games ever made.
Sometimes those interesting experimental efforts are more interesting to look back on than something that was, just really good and, hit the ball out of the park right away. The kind of noble, ambitious failures are as interesting to look back on as the successes.
Those games, they can contextualize and tell you a slice of life of when these games came out and what the industry was like when they came out.
Being able to actually look back at it and understand kind of what they were doing, what our market was like at the time, why does this exist? When you're looking at this as a complete sort of time capsule, I think it becomes a lot more compelling.
I hope that what we're doing with this game can contribute to what its final legacy will be.
I think, like myself, there is a subset of people that find this era of video game history just fascinating. I gather that those people are the ones that are actually okay, I'm kind of curious to see what the heck are they going to do with this thing?
Most people I think kind of got it. And this made me very happy for the reasons of game preservation that come to a place where people kind of were like, yeah, this is awesome. It's not just about having these greatest 8-bit games put in the compilation. It's not just about that anymore.
I think the time is ripe for games like this to be reevaluated. And specifically this one, because it is so unusual for, in terms of its content and its structure.
I'm kind of hoping it inspires people to make games that are just as wacky and zany as this. Hopefully not still images, but, get the vibe that this game kind of emits and see if they can try to replicate it with something that they want to make.
So I want to say thank you for supporting an effort to remaster a game that nobody would have ever expected to get a remaster. And your support of projects like these will enable us to do more things like this in the future and remaster more games that are unexpected, forgotten, but historically significant to some level. Games that other people might not touch because they're bad or they're not games that have this huge, wide amount of appeal. And I really appreciate people who will support endeavors like that.
So when it came to actually AI upscaling this game, that was a gigantic task that I don't think I was fully prepared for, but when I came into the company, I was the only one that had true kind of involvement in the AI scene. I'd worked in Japan, and in Japan I'd worked very closely with the advent of AI upscaling in anime and then visual novels as well. I had dabbled a little bit into doing real photographs, and generally that is not great. Even today, as we're recording this, it hadn't really gotten to where I needed it to be. And that was a big problem because we had about 800 images that then needed to go from 640 by 480 index-colored BMP images into fully upscaled, clear photographs. So when I sat down to plan this out, the company, Limited Run Games, had already tried their hand at using kind of conventional AI upscaling applications. There are some out there, they're very good. And the results that came from that was kind of twofold. So you could absolutely see there is something here. Trees, shrubbery, this kind of stuff was being reproduced, but characters, objects, things that very much catches your eye was plasticky and kind of, it looked like everyone was just wrapped in some sort of protective rubber. This is making everyone look much more icky, and we can't go over this. There was another AI model that had been put into use, and it made everyone come out like kind of fried chicken texture. And I was like, I don't think this is going the right direction. So what I decided to do was, I have the connections to get in touch with the actress. One thing I talked to Jeanne was, hey, I want to try something out here. I want to do an AI upscale. what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach or feed my own AI model and basically have it recognize you. But I need a lot of references. Can I use images of you? And can you supply them to me? And she was very happy. She was kind of like, this is really cool. And so we started to get to work. And it took me about 3 weeks to really create a model that I was satisfied with. The problem I had now introduced was that I had a model that was very good at recognizing Jeanne, but it made also Edward look like Jeanne. So I had to go contact him and say, basically, hey, I need a lot of images of you. And luckily, Edward also had a modeling career. So that was no problem. And feed the AI again, reconstruct the images. Now everyone looked like Edward much more. So what happened in the end was, basically I had 3 different AI models. One for Edward, one for Jeanne, one for backgrounds. The other actors were fairly prominent in their scenes so that the AI could do an approximation and I could hand edit all the inconsistencies. But for the general images, what I did was I ran a batch process once for every person and then once for the backgrounds. I would take those results and actually composite them together from their individual sources into one image and kind of edit around each layer and find, okay, this one did a better job reproducing this, this, and this. Together would form the full scene. That wasn't enough though. What was kind of becoming clear to me halfway in, I would say like 8 to 9 months kind of into all this, even though those original images are very low quality, they still retain kind of like a color temperature and overall quality of a 90s photograph, like a Kodak moment. Because this game is just a sequence of Kodak moments. So what I did was basically scan my own family albums, a lot of pictures from different times. You scan them at a high DPI. You go in real close. What happens? Well, you start to see what is kind of the grain, how colors are blending together. And I went in and I made a custom filter that reproduced that look, that feel, to then batch process on top of the images I now reconstructed. Problem now was a lot of those old images that I had basically reconstructed 6 and 7 months prior had color balances that was out of sync with what I now needed for this new filter, which was then going to like reproduce that look. All in all, it took about, I'd say about a year from the first image to the very last one to get this all in. But as you can see in the game, I think what we managed to do was even better than actually scanning the individual images that was taken back then. And the reason why we couldn't even do that was that the production, the original production, was done on 4 different cameras. Through someone on production, Giovanni, we realized the game had been shot across some sort of bigger like studio photo camera and also a running video camera, a VCR camera. There's film, Polaroid, and then there's actual photographs. And none of this really has survived. So even if we did have full access to the sources, we would have to comb through the actual video and find the stills. It's interesting in the sense that I think the game was meant to be video, but of course for us doing this reconstruction, it meant we could only use what was in the game, and what was in the game did not lend itself well to AI. I'm pretty proud of it now though, because I think this is basically one of the first times that we used AI for actual real-life photographs. So I think it's pretty neat, and I hope everyone playing it also enjoys it.
Fasten your seatbelts, because I'm about to turn this story over to you. Your mission, should you accept it, is to get these 2 lovebirds together.
Hi, I'm Jane. God, he's cute. Great smile.
Jane? John and Jane. Corny. I guess I could change my name to Tarzan.
You know what? I really have to go, but it's nice meeting you, John.
Wait. What are you doing later? For lunch? Can I buy you lunch? No, I'm serious. I'm really a plumber.
John, plumbers don't wear ties. Now, come on, stop fooling around.
Jeanne, run!
Oh, God.
It is the first American-produced visual novel.
He came up to me and asked if I'd be interested in doing a video game, and I'm like, hell yeah, let's do it. We were just like Ed Wood, on the run, let's go do it, quick.
It only became this weird cult classic through the sort of YouTube zeitgeist.
I didn't think it was going to make a very good episode, but I tried anyway.
Technologically, it's rather anemic.
I mean, look at it. Either people love it.
I'm giving it too much credit.
Or they hate it.
It is a grease fire.
Or they think it's funny.
This game sort of has a legacy that's very special and one of a kind.
I think you'll love it. Hi, my name is Jane. We might have met before, but you're about to rediscover a lot more about me. Maybe even more than you bargained for. This whole thing is like a brand new Corvette, still riding along the information superhighway. You put your strong, muscular hands around that controller and make me excited like it's happy feedback, haptic feedback. And I promise to do everything your little heart desires, but only if you check out all the new features and special contents. Just imagine you can watch me kick my sleazeball boss's ass, all in the new Plumber Vision. But if you make the wrong move, you could turn me into a nun yet again. Imagine that, me, a nun? No way. Really, it's all up to you. Who knows what you'll do with that little hot pad of yours? It's got way more buttons than the last time we met. I like a man who knows how to push the right buttons. Point is, life's a game, and this game is all about life. You do right by me, and I guarantee to do right by... Oh, whoa! What the hell are you doing? We're not gonna do this again. You are a sleazebag, and this is not the 90s. Do you think I'm stupid that I don't know what you're... Welcome back to Plumbers Don't Wear Ties. Now let me remaster your face.
Hello everyone, and this is the interactive commentary for Plumbers Don't Wear Ties. I am the producer of this remaster for this game. How did that happen? We'll never know. But what I do know is that I'm actually joined by the main actress and superstar of this game, Jeanne Basone.
Hey there.
Hello, hello, and I'm very excited about this. You are on screen right now for our fans.
I want to know where that necklace is.
Is that your necklace? Did you buy that?
That was mine. It's a heart. It's a silver heart.
I see.
And I was looking for it, and I just don't know where it went.
Now, I have to comment on the production quality of this, because this is pretty high-end, I see. Is that your white sheet as well, or did the production staff provide that for you?
That was their white sheet.
Okay. And then what about the outfit? Do you remember kind of?
Oh, that's mine.
That's yours.
But I can't tell. It looks like it's a dress with a bra underneath it. I'm thinking, yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were wondering kind of what you were wearing in general for this game.
Or
we'll
not
talk about that.
Here.
Oh, yeah. So this is an interesting. This game is very interesting. We'll talk all about the production here.
Okay.
But this is known as an FMV game, which is full motion video game.
Okay.
You're one of the first kind of notable stars to do that in the video game space, coming from another industry.
Okay.
But this is actually the only video that's in the game.
Do you see the cuts? Are those cuts that we're seeing there? That back there. I will definitely say the rings. See, I still have my rings.
Oh yeah, I can confirm through this audio that you are wearing.
I'm still wearing different ones, but I like my silver.
I also have to comment on the fact that you actually have not aged much since
Oh,
this.
you're being nice.
Not at all. Like, well, also I'm being nice, but like you actually do look very similar.
Oh, now
to this.
how did this happen?
Yeah,
Okay, how did magically the dress is gone? Does it look like it's gone? And now I'm wearing
it's
this
a
bra thing?
I think you lowered it a little bit. I don't know.
No, I saw.
Is that a bra? You're bringing the hard questions there to me. I don't know.
Sorry. See, now I had a dress on. So this must have been another cut. I'm pretty sure.
Do you remember?
Oh my goodness! Now what is happening here?
Well,
there's that necklace I've been looking for.
It got lost over the years. Huh?
It did, yeah.
So do you kind of remember? Was this shot at the beginning of the production, or was this just in the middle somewhere?
I want to. I don't know. Well, see what I'm wearing here now?
Yeah.
So it must have been shot not in the beginning. I'm thinking there was more happening.
You do have a few different outfits. Of course, there's the business outfit that's you're most famous for.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the lingerie.
The lingerie for, yeah.
There's a very nice title screen as well, by the way. I'd say.
Looks like my yeah.
It looks like your cat made it, maybe?
Yes,
yeah.
Lala or Jaja.
Both of them. It was their assignment. Yeah, so the production quality of this game is...
It's terrible. Did he just write it?
I don't know.
Were there no fonts back in the day? See, I'm not sure.
I think we had invented fonts by then.
Oh.
I don't know where they got theirs from. So...
It's horrible. Sorry.
So here's that title screen again, and we are actually entering the game now as it is. Now, game being a little bit in quotation marks because this was an experimental time for video games.
Right.
And so the game actually is decision-based. At certain junctions, you do pick, and Michael Anderson will talk about him.
Anderson, right.
In alphabetical order, there you are. Jeanne Basone. Were you known, because you were Hollywood.
I was Hollywood and Glow by this time. Glow was already done. So Glow was 19 for me. I started in 85.
Right.
And the last one was like 89, 90. So this was after Glow.
So did you professionally go by Jeanne?
No, I went by Hollywood usually.
For the most part?
Yeah, for the most part. Or Jeanne Hollywood Basone, but I prefer it was Hollywood.
Because that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about was that you're credited with your real name here.
Right.
But I found some marketing and just kind of general blurbs about this game when it was coming out.
Right.
And everyone always says it's Hollywood. So they always did
But they
refer to you with
probably
that.
remembered me as Hollywood, aka Jane. Aka, well, Jeanne.
Jeanne, yeah. But your character is Jane in this game.
Yes,
name.
it is.
Yeah. And here you have some inverted colors.
What is this? I'm just curious. What drugs was Michael Anderson on? Sorry, Michael.
Hopefully we can find out somehow. That was one of my questions to you, but I guess you don't know. There you are for the first time in the game.
Yeah.
And that's the mother. Do you
She
remember?
looks like the Heavy Metal Sisters. That's what when they wore their makeup, that's what they looked like. I swear to God, I thought it was Chainsaw and Spike as the Heavy Metal Sisters.
Here's Edward for the first time as well.
Look at those abs. I don't even remember that kid having all that. Wow.
Yeah, he
was in shape.
Yeah, well, he's
Good
still
for
in
him.
pretty good shape. Do you remember Frank?
Who's Frank?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, because photography is by him. I was wondering if you remembered kind of, first of all, do you remember if this was all shot on video and it's stills, or did they use photo?
I want to say Michael
cameras?
had a video camera and
Okay.
everything was video. And if there was someone taking photos, I do not remember another person, but because Michael did pretty much everything.
Right. So.
And it was longer days too, you know.
How long was the production? Do you remember generally?
A couple of weeks maybe. He wanted to get it done quickly. And I was like, yeah, let's do this. And I didn't know what 3DO was or ever heard of it. And I don't know if Edward knew the same. You know, we were both hired. I don't know how he was hired, but I was doing, listen to this. We were doing lingerie shows at a restaurant called Chewy's in Glendale. And Michael used to come to those shows.
Oh, that's how we found you.
And they were during lunch. It was a lunchtime lingerie show. And he had come up to me and asked if I would be interested in starring in a video game. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. What was that?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I was hoping
Is
you
that
maybe...
braces that she's wearing?
No, I think that's just how she looks.
Okay.
Yeah, I was kind of curious.
I don't know.
What your concept of a video game was before you joined in the production of one. What was kind of your memories of video games at this point?
Atari.
Atari?
Mom and Dad had that. That's really... And again, this is 1993, so I'm, you know, late 20s, and I'm not playing video games at this point in my life. I'm going to the clubs and having a good time.
Often when people talk about this game in a modern context, it's a lot about how they portray women in this game and just kind of how, you know, sexual a lot of the imagery is. But I have to say that Edward as well is shot quite erotically.
So he has no top on. Yeah, exactly.
Well, he also has no pants on, and the sheet there barely covered everything.
Things were different back then.
Right. It was a very playful time.
Yeah, it was. And it was the same like in Glow. I mean, people flirted with you, and you can take it for what it's worth. But for me, that's what it was. It wasn't someone, you know, people hit on you. That was a form of flirting to me. Look at that.
Yeah, it's
an inner negative of her face.
They used all the effects in this game, of which there are 3. But so generally, how long did you know Michael before he asked you to join this production?
Not long, because he was just one of the patrons that came into the store, came into the restaurant. Didn't know long, but I knew he was there. He'd always tip us. You know, we'd sell him raffle tickets, and he would pay for the raffle tickets. I guess he just had what Jane was going to be like, and he said, "That's her, the girl in the lingerie at lunchtime. Look at the drum thing." So I was dating. I think I might have been dating somebody who played drums, and those are my drumsticks. I don't think those are. There's Michael.
So that's actually
Look, he's got Drano on there.
He has Drano
with the booze and Excedrin. Look.
Yeah,
it looks like a racing form.
I noticed this as well, and I was kind of curious, what's the implication there? Does he mix Drano in his drinks? I really don't know.
You know, that's how you poison people.
Well,
oh my gosh.
Who knows? Is it dark?
I'm just saying.
Well, he plays your father actually in this game, and the story generally is about you or John having to get kids and kind of find the right one.
Okay. Look, he's boozing it up.
Yeah.
Look at me. That's how I would be like, yes, Dad.
Do you think that, like, we talked a little bit about scripts before recording this, but do you remember on set, was there a full script, or was it mostly that you came up with situations to take pictures of on the spot?
Michael had a script for us.
Okay.
Yeah, and I remember, I guess I memorized it. I'm not quite sure. There was a lot of words going on there, but he had a script for us.
Right. This is the famous
This
shower
is the shower,
music.
and I'm trying to think where this was. Was this Michael's apartment? Whose? Oh, that's my cat!
That's your cat?
Oh my God, that's Keeters! Oh, Keeksters!
How old was he at this time?
That's a girl. Oh, what does she do? Whoa, I don't like that. That man's hairy. No.
Not your
there
preference.
I am. Look at that.
Not so hairy.
Okay, so listen, if the cat is in there, this must be at my house in 1993 or an apartment.
This is absolutely insane what we're hearing. So all these, this is one of the first video games.
Look at this censored.
Yeah, so we are watching the censored version. I'm not sure what that picture is supposed to be. Is it Michael? Can you recognize if that's his face or something?
It looks like he has a pretend nose on.
Yeah. But
look at all the stuff in the background.
Yeah.
Maybe this was mine. It had to be. If there was Kitty in there, this is my play. Look at that. That's like Playgirl or something.
And Playboy.
And Playboy.
How did
wow,
you
I wish I still had that body. Woo!
As I said, you haven't aged much. But how did you kind of feel about these kind of...
I was in here.
Yeah.
There's the face. Should I be doing this?
Yeah.
I don't want to show anything.
This is when reality set in for you?
Yes, and I did not see him, so I'll let you know that Edward did his own scenes with Michael, and Michael did the scenes with me, so...
So
wow.
So this was also
okay, so this has to be... Look, there's
a cat.
My cat! Oh my God. And did you see the robe in the background?
Yes.
That was from Japan.
Oh, really?
I know I got that when I was in Japan.
Because you used to go with Japan for business, right?
Yeah. Yes. I went for They shoot.
So-
Wow, and there's the hat. Did you see that hat?
Yeah.
See that
famous
mirror
one.
there? That was an old dresser that I had. It's a vintage. Look at, she got scared and she's going underneath.
So you shot your pictures at your place, basically, or was this?
It is my place.
Yeah.
It's a place in North Hollywood. I'm pretty sure that was the kitchen. What?
So I wonder.
No, that is not. Yeah, I believe the shower.
Mm.
Am I brushing my teeth in the car? I am.
You absolutely are. It's not too safe. And you're putting makeup on too.
I am.
Yeah, they should probably have a
This
warning
is probably
about
the
this
streets
as well.
of Glendale
Yeah.
here.
You were living there at the time?
No, I lived in Burbank. I was in North Hollywood.
Okay.
And that car that I'm in looks like the Honda Prelude that I had.
So man, you actually stepped in for production here, and you kind of provided
That is
a lot
not
of
the
your own.
car that I was in.
Oh,
that
I
I'm
see.
driving in. I don't know whose car. I did not have a dark blue car like that.
Huh. So now we're
See
actually
the Corvette in
entering...
the back, that black one?
Yeah.
There you go. That's more my style.
I see. So we're entering here kind of the main portion of the game before the long chase, but where is this parking lot?
So this is a Sunday
Yeah.
in Glendale where there's hardly any cars. I know we see cars in here, but we decided to shoot in a place where there wasn't going to be a lot of people walking around. Plus, I don't know if you needed permits back then to shoot when you had a camera.
You generally
Like
do.
Ed Wood.
Yeah.
Yes. See, and I know we didn't have permits.
So you just stole all the shots,
Pretty
as
much.
it's called.
Yes,
Yeah.
we did.
And
Oh my
here's-
gosh.
This is Michael as well then, as the narrator?
Uh-huh. Oh, he's talking to that. He's not talking to anybody. He's talking to a statue.
Yeah, on
On the
this
bench.
bench. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
This narrative will come back in various forms throughout the game.
I will say, I know it looks weird, everybody, but
Mm.
look at his flip-flops. Oh my
Yes.
goodness. Wow.
So he also plays your
He's
father.
creative, I will say that.
Yeah.
He plays what?
He also plays your father in this game. So
Oh,
he's
yeah.
multiple. I'm not sure if
I think he's the chicken.
He's also the chicken man, the famous chicken man. I'm just wondering if it's trying to say that the narrator is also your father, or, you know, did it say anything like this in the script? That like...
That he was going to be my dad?
Yeah.
Probably, yes. Yeah. He's a nice man.
Yeah.
Is he still alive?
I believe so. Yeah.
Awesome.
We can confirm. I believe he's still alive, doing
Great.
well, and he's in other
That's
business now.
excellent. Look at this. He makes a first move, Jeanne. This is when in the game where you're picking the three.
You're picking the three routes, and generally, if you pick the wrong one, it won't go too far.
I've
It will-
heard.
Yeah, it will tell you basically.
Everybody
you made the
went
wrong
for number
move,
2 probably, or number 1.
makes a move on him.
Yeah. Either he or Jane.
Yeah,
Not meeting has to wait. That would be boring.
yeah.
Who'd want that? Look at that little scooter in the background.
That's the choice they made. Yeah, I wonder if that was his scooter. I mean,
Or was it somebody's that we just sat on?
yeah, and just bring the helmet. Like, who knows?
Knowing Michael, he just said, go over there real quick.
At this time, we haven't interviewed Edward yet for the production. We will eventually, but I am curious to ask him some of these same questions.
Right.
Where's this? Do you recognize where this would be?
It looks like Chewy's in Glendale.
I see. So it's mostly around that area.
Because I believe Michael lived in the area.
Oh, I see. Okay.
That's why he would frequent the restaurant, Chewy's.
So you say that you worked from a script, and I'm kind of curious, did you act...
At least the dialogue.
Right. So did you shoot the dialogue on set? Do you remember coming back to do recording for voiceovers, like ADR?
No voiceovers.
Okay. So
I just
no
remember
ADR.
gorilla shooting boom, boom, boom.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. Go.
And actually, I have to
And
say
there was
that
really no rights and no wrongs. He was just
Yeah.
just go with it. I remember feeling very comfortable with him.
Right.
The shower thing was a little uncomfortable, like I told you, because I'm a Catholic girl, you know,
Right.
and born and raised, and you know, I have my sisters and mom and dad, and you know,
in this.
you know how that goes.
Right.
But I felt a little, even though I had already done Playboy, because
Yeah.
I did in December
Right.
1989, but this was different. You know, it was a different.
Well, your fans can now look up eBay for that issue, as you,
There you
mentioned
go.
when it was. What was the first impressions you had of Edward when you met him?
Nice guy.
Yeah.
Very kind. Very nice.
Do you remember?
I'd never met him before, so I don't know where he found him.
I think, as I understand it, he
See,
was a
now
model.
she's in my car. Look,
Oh.
check that out.
Do you know who it is?
I have no idea, but that was the blue car that I was sitting in. It's probably the owner of the car.
So I
I'm confused about these characters because they come in now and they leave. They never come back. And
I know who that is. He was a friend.
Okay. So he's not part of the production.
They were extras probably. Some extras that we did extra work with.
Right. Huh.
Giovanni. That's his name. I think that's Giovanni.
Okay.
I don't know the girl,
We're
but
uncovering
I think,
all the mysteries here.
yeah, I think that's Giovanni. This is cool.
He
Oh,
gets
look, she
kicked
gave him a
in-
low blow. I probably taught her to do that.
That's a famous wrestling move right there.
That's it.
Mastered by Ric Flair.
Pretty good. Look at it. Look at her face. There's the vet in the back.
So even though the game is known for being of questionable quality, some of these shots, I have to say, the framing of them are actually quite nice.
Yeah, but if you notice, see how they keep going with the same
Yeah.
photo.
Yeah, I mean, they do reuse some shots, but we're watching the old version here, but for the game, as the players are playing here,
Mhm.
they can choose between seeing the scene
That's
in
right.
Remastered
I'm sorry,
or
that's right.
original. And when I was remastering them, I was kind of surprised by just some of the framing was actually quite well done.
That's good.
Yeah, and especially, of course, shots of you, where they made sure that they got a good angle of you and just kind of...
Phone booth. Don't see those anymore.
No, those are all gone for the most part. You see them in Japan still.
Someone else sitting on the bike. What does it say? Oh, plumbers. What does that say?
It says
Plumber on a bike.
Plumber on a bike.
I love that. Wow. She moves fast.
All these people, this game moves fast.
I don't know that
And these
gentleman,
characters
by the
come
way.
and go. So this scene is kind of unrelated generally to the main storyline with you and John.
Okay.
But it kind of follows the same humor.
Do you know these people?
I am not sure. I've been
Okay.
trying to kind of figure out
Yeah, who
why
they-
they're in the game. We can find their names in general, but they never end up being people from video games. They never really seem to be registered to the company that made this game.
They possibly could be extras or friends of Michael's.
I figured
You
they were
know,
friends. Yeah.
People always help people out when they need freebies done.
Right. Do you remember kind of how long you were on this specific, we say set, but this location? Did you shoot over several days or just all
No,
in one
we had
day?
to do this probably in one day.
Yeah.
And it looks like it's an overcast day, by the way. You don't see
Yeah.
any shadows anywhere, which was perfect, really, for shooting. That probably, there's that.
Back to
again.
photo again.
Yeah.
Do you still have that jacket?
I knew you were going to ask me. I thought I did. No, I don't think so, but I like that jacket. It looks good on.
It's a nice jacket,
I
yeah.
think it's stretched in the places it need to stretch. Pretty sure.
Yeah.
Oh, look at this young lady.
And what's confusing about this is that these characters kind of pop up on the same spot that you guys are standing in as well. So it's high and loose with continuity.
Interesting.
But it adds to the zaniness of this game.
Look at his tie. Interesting.
He is wearing a tie, which means that...
Another plumber, maybe.
Or not. She is wearing something quite
Like a
interesting.
bra.
Yeah, it's just... I guess it's a top or a bra.
It looks kind of like what I was wearing.
And I'm guessing these people also then would have to be friends with production or...
Yeah, or extras. Because when we get to the boss,
Yeah.
my boss, Paul,
Hmm.
I think I got him this gig because he
Oh,
was
really?
looking for somebody to play my boss. I
Wow.
got the perfect guy, Paul Boker. Is it
Yeah.
pronounced Boker?
I think it was Boker.
Yeah. Nice guy.
I think he has left us. We'll talk more about him as we get to him. But I mean,
That's
some
sad.
of these shots are pretty nice. I mean,
Yeah.
there are. I did notice when I remastered these images that certainly some of them must be sourced from different types of equipment. Because while I was asking you earlier, is that some of these images are clearly Polaroids or from a photo camera. But
I don't think it's Polaroids. I think it's.
there's no Polaroids in this.
I don't remember Polaroids.
Well, there's
you
some
tell
shots
me.
in the. There's some
You'd
shots.
be more the expert than myself.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm just looking at kind of contrast and color,
Okay.
even though it's low quality. You kind of
Is that like a Swiss Army knife?
I think so. Yeah, it's the screwdriver on it or the
Oh,
wine
yeah.
bottle.
And there he is again over in
Yes.
front of the restaurant.
There's crazy music in the background.
Is he wearing those sandals? Yeah.
Yeah, he's still wearing the flip flops and the hat.
So I don't think that myself or Edward were here during.
Right.
He just needed us for our scenes. He didn't bring us into his scenes, which was good.
You said it was like about 4 weeks of production.
Maybe, if that. I think we did a lot of things on the weekends because everyone was working.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if it was kind of every day or.
I'm pretty We'll have to get with Edward to find out, but I'm pretty sure we only did weekends because we were all working.
Right.
Is Kieran like the Kieran, like Kieran always reminds me of Kieran Beer.
So Kieran is the publisher, the original publisher.
I know, right. He makes the first move.
This is a nice shot of you. This is when we first started announcing and making trailers for the game, we remastered this image, and I have some stories about the remastering of these images that I think you'll find funny. But this was the one we used because we all thought that was such a nice picture of you standing there.
Yeah, thank you.
So now he's making the first move on you. And
as they shoot they smile, you guys are just, smile, Jane, excuse me.
Did you get to know Edward a little bit on set, or was he shy? What kind of person was he?
I just remember him being very kind, very nice.
Mm-hmm. He is wearing a tie here, which is the same tie that the other gentleman was also wearing.
Oh, he is, isn't he? I think I blew him off here, didn't I?
Yes.
Because he was...
there he is. Yeah. Super.
I blew him off.
Now he's wearing a beret, so
right.
I guess there is some kind of context here of his mood, whether or not he gets more aggressive. I guess he gets more militaristic with his approach, and then eventually he turns into a chicken, which...
that is just... I don't understand the chicken part. Got to remember, too, when we did this, when we were doing this, I don't think we got to see all of this video at all, so we really didn't... I remember not really knowing how it was going to be put into a game.
Right.
How is this going to be put into a video game?
Right.
But did I care back then? No, we got paid. You know,
that's the most important part of working in video games.
We were paid. This was not free. Look, flowers.
He got them from where? Where did those flowers come from? Was he prepared?
They were on the bike. Didn't you see it?
I guess so.
They magically appeared. I guess I liked them. Look at his face, how cute. He's all happy.
He's very innocent.
Yes, yes.
And he comes off to me as shy when you look at his pictures and stuff. He was a model, but I mean, this must have been his first acting gig. He did make a movie later on.
Okay.
Actually, a self-funded and self-directed movie.
Oh, I love that. Good for him.
Yeah. So I'm sure he will talk a little bit to us about that in
that'd be
his
exciting.
interviews. But
we were all going on auditions back during this time, so I'm sure he was doing auditions. I know I was.
Yeah.
Let's see, Married with Children had already played. I think that was 92.
Right.
Again, it's season 4, episode 17. That myself, the farmer's daughter, the late farmer's daughter, and the late Big Bad Mama were on. So what are we doing here? Are we giving phone numbers?
I think there's an exchange here, yes.
There's no cell phones, you see.
No, this is
how we did it, kids. Back in the day, we didn't have these things to go, what's your number and I'll call you.
So this was shot around, was it 93 or 94? Do you
Somewhere
remember?
around there.
Yeah.
Could be 92 as well if it came out in 93.
Right. Now, when you were acting in this, I would have to say that your character comes off somewhat similar to you as a person. Was that kind of just you interpreting, did you recognize yourself in the character in the script, or did you just add yourself a little bit more to it?
I just add He really didn't give us that much direction, and I was just being Jeannie.
Right.
Being Jane. He gave us a little bit, oh, look at that. That's great.
So that is one of the best shots in the game.
That's a great shot.
I'm not sure what you're doing, though.
A la Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Look.
On the couch, yeah. Wow. It's a couch moment. You're just kind of standing looking at the wall there. I've been quite curious.
You know why? Because I probably thought I was out of frame. No one told me, tell the blonde to move to the left a little bit more.
It's like the Blair Witch Project, but many years earlier. It's like the ending of it.
I like the Blair Witch Project.
They do all these different angles of him doing this, and it's such a statue. You can
Maybe
make
Michael
him out of
liked
bronze.
him a lot.
Yeah, it must be.
Michael probably said, "Hey, look, this is." Oh, he's putting on his jacket.
Yeah, his leather jacket there.
Yep.
He looks like a cool guy.
He was cool.
He looks like a John.
Very professional.
Yeah, this is something that we've been very interested in learning more about. There is also the interviews with you on this game, which you can learn more about the production. But in general, you guys had a lot of fun on set.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
guessing. Yeah. So it was a very good experience for you overall.
It was a great experience because, like I said, both of us were trying to do acting back in the day.
Right.
And on this one, he just picked us. You and you are going to do this. We didn't have to be in a room full of 20 girls that look like Jane.
Right.
Which we always had to do.
How long was this after Glow went out of business? Do you remember?
3 years later.
3 years
two to
later.
3 years later.
Yeah.
And I was dabbling into stunt work as well, a little bit.
Right.
Stunts. Kind of there. This was like I told you, the lingerie shows that we did at Chewy's. And we also did them at Barney's Beanery. They were lunch shows. We'd walk around. We'd sell raffle tickets. And you'd win a prize. There you go.
Wow.
That would get people to come to the lunches.
Right.
You see. And look at him. He's either posing or thinking. But I'm not sure what the video's saying.
I'm not sure, but so generally in the script then, it was somewhat loose, you said. Like you followed some dialogue, you followed some directions, but it wasn't too detailed in terms of just kind of, so some
No, it was not detailed. I don't remember it being detailed.
So there was a lot of improvisation from you guys?
Yeah, a lot
in
of
terms
improv.
Yeah.
I think there was improv, and he directed a little bit, and we just went with it, and he loved what we did.
Right.
Love it or hate it, that's what you got.
Well, it does sound, I was going to mention earlier in this commentary, but it does, even though, again, the questionable quality of some of the production and like the sets are all stove and whatnot, your performances are actually somewhat genuine and like it flows fairly well. So it does sound like you're having a lot of fun. There's very little stumbling. There's very little uncertainty. And voiceovers were very new in video games at this point. So it is actually somewhat well acted for what it is. And then you playing yourself, I'm sure you had a lot of confidence in just kind of going out there and being yourself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like being the character Hollywood, basically, in Glow. And it wasn't long. Here's the thing, though, is see how we're seeing the game? Pick this as, I don't remember any of that. Do this and do that and pose over here and come over here. You know, that's basically because I don't even think I had the game. Oh, look at that. I must have. I took control there.
That's
didn't
a schmooch.
I guess. Now, how did I feel about that one? Let's see. It's 1993. Oh, yeah. I knew who I was dating. Okay.
Yeah, we won't disclose who it is, but that's a nice shot, too.
That was a great shot. I was going to say.
So when these.
Not much fat on my body here. I can tell you that. I'm critiquing myself right now.
You shouldn't. You look great now and then. So,
but I'm critiquing it going, I wish I could be 30 again. Woo!
I'm in my 30s and I look way worse than you.
That's not true.
So,
now he said, what did I tease him a little bit?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. He didn't like that. But yeah, as you see these things that you're seeing, Michael would just that's where the improv would come in right there. That wouldn't have been, he would have said, do this and do that. But I don't even remember getting a copy of this game. I think I got mine on Amazon.
Really?
I'm pretty sure. And Amazon wasn't around back then.
Yeah, so you just,
so I had no
being
idea.
in the game, you knew about it.
Basically, we did this game, or I did this game, and so did Edward, and then just moved on. I didn't think twice about it. What happened to it?
Yeah,
like where did it go?
It went on some store shelves. Not too many, unfortunately. And then it resurfaced on the internet later on and then became very valuable, which we'll talk a bit about. I'm curious if you spoke to Edward at all after production or was it only during production?
Only during production.
And what about Michael?
I can't remember. I'm sure he still came to the shows, and like with any job, time goes on and you move on. Let's see, that's 1993. Trying to think. New boyfriend. At that
New
point.
adventures.
Yeah, new adventures. You move on. I don't remember staying in contact with Edward But we're totally two different people too.
Right.
He had very short hair, and I didn't like short hair back then. I liked long hair and bad boys, and I think he was a really good boy.
He does come off that way. Now
But he's handsome. Oh my goodness! There's Paul.
Yes. So this is. Do you remember? It was Paul Boker, right? Boker.
Yes, I worked with him on some sets before.
Yeah, I'm very curious about this. So we're now entering what is probably more controversial part of the game, and we'll try to provide some context to it though. But where did you know him from then? If you got him a gig?
We were doing some extra work on some movies or TV back in the day. He also had a son that was a little younger than me, but we were always on sets and running into each other.
Right.
So I think we were the same agent as well. And that's why we were on different things.
Do you kind of remember anything he was in before this?
I'd have to look him up on IMDb, but no, not offhand. But he's a good actor. I thought that he was a very good actor.
Yeah.
Look at that face. What?
You know, it's interesting again that like the performances are fairly straightforward and genuine for this game. They have a little bit of fun in the in the performances.
Am I crying?
I think they did try to make it look like you're crying a bit.
Oh my goodness, yeah. I think. Are you going to ask me, are those real tears?
Were they? Was it when you thought about
Of course they were real.
Yeah.
Of course those are real.
As an actor, it has to be real, right?
That's right. And look at his face. He was a nice guy.
He has texture, that man.
Yes.
Like I had to remaster his face quite a lot, and it's interesting. I've seen every pore.
How do you put a Thresher? That's what they called him.
Yeah, his name is Thresher.
So see this building here. This is another building, I believe, in Glendale. And again, we're there on Sunday. I'm thinking it's where Michael worked.
Ah, so
I'm pretty sure that's why we went there. This was his office. I mean, that's how I remember it. His office, definitely Sunday, nobody there, and the parking lot.
It's really a do-it-yourself production.
It is
for a video game.
For real.
And this was what was so interesting about these types of games is that because it's video-based, you could kind of cheat your way into a game setting like this. You didn't have to program an AI. You didn't have to make graphics. You were the graphic, right?
Right.
So
a cheap way of doing it.
A cheap way of doing it. And this probably was on the lower end of the spectrum in terms of budgets.
Of course.
Do you remember if there was any budget?
We'd have to ask Michael, but I'm sure this all came out of Michael's pocket.
Right.
And why did Michael decide to make this? That's what I would love.
Yeah, I would love to know as
but
well.
You know what? Some
where
people are
like
that. They're very creative and they say, I want to make a video game.
There were, movie people at this time were looking at this as kind of the future and a new avenue. So there was a lot, especially from television. There's a lot of people who looked at it and said like, well, I produce episodic small action films on TV for low budgets. And video games is the perfect platform to do something like that. So I do wonder if Michael also maybe put some money into television maybe at some point.
No clue. I do not know, but he may have. I wish I knew more about, when you're younger and you're being the actor or the star in the movie and you're younger and you don't have siblings or anybody else in the business, you're not thinking of the technical and the behind the scenes stuff of everything, which I love now.
Yeah.
I love asking who, what, why, and where. And here it was just like a gig. It's going to pay my rent. It's money. Yes, this is on the up and up. Oh, that's a cute smile.
It's very nice.
Yeah.
This still makes me think that it's a video camera because you can see the blurring of the frame.
Right.
And later on you see that.
Do you mean pulling from the video?
Yeah. So it was a still and then.
Yeah. That's why it's pixelated.
Yeah. Look at that. That's a cute shot again, though.
It's cute. Look at him smiling.
He's very happy.
He's waiting. Is he still waiting in the parking lot for me?
Probably. He wants you to come back out.
Or this is part of the game part, see?
So generally, yeah.
Yes.
See. You must have had, quite a lot of shoots on this day, though. Like just a lot of...
Yeah, can you see that?
Because
and the cool thing again, I remember saying that it was a cloudy day, so it really didn't matter where the sun was,
right?
For continuity. I think this is where also the cover of the video is taken from one of these stills. Oh, now I'm going to punch him and get in that girl's car. What was she doing in my car? come on, we need continuity here.
That's not the game's strong suit.
I know, but there's Chicken Man. Oh,
Yeah,
and there's
for the
the
very first
look,
time.
and there's the flip flops.
So yeah, we don't know the context of this, but it is the most famous part of the game.
What is the bag next to him? Is that a bag? Do you see the?
I see underneath there. Yeah,
it looks like Cracker Barrel, but there was no Cracker Barrel back then.
no.
What is that?
Maybe he just bought some nachos or something in
I don't
between
know.
shooting.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I do wonder how many people will, because this is always just kind of like 1 or 2 people in these shots. You are not there.
But
So I
it
do
could be
wonder-
the gentleman that we saw's name that did the photography.
So I wonder if this was just something they went out and did
Yes.
on an off day and just kind of had fun.
I'm sure they did.
Do you remember kind of how much equipment generally was on set? Did you have
Not
lights?
like what it looks like in here. No.
Yes, in our expensive
You know,
recording
did
studio
we
like
have
Limited Run
lights?
Games.
Gosh. He might have had one light.
One
Maybe
light.
those old lights, you know?
Yeah.
The ones that get
bulb.
really hot.
Yeah.
Yeah, the bulbs.
Now this, look at that, because that drawing right there, I don't think your cat even.
Yeah, that's interesting. Finds a job for Jane after all.
Yeah, here are the different situations that you're going to be facing when it comes to this scene. Do you kind of remember in general, when you were shooting these scenes, they go in an interesting direction.
Yeah, they
depending on the
do.
choice, right? You came from lingerie modeling and stuff you mentioned, but like how prepared were you for these situations with Michael?
Well, I felt comfortable on set.
Yeah.
I know that with these guys, but still you're just like, you always know here what feels good and what doesn't feel good.
Right.
All the time. So I felt a little uncomfortable. But that being said, you know, he probably thought that I'd be the perfect Jane because we were doing lingerie shows
Right.
at lunchtime at restaurants. So I was already dressed
Yeah.
like that. So,
and it is shot like when you do end up in that attire, and it is shot very much like a lingerie model is shot in the catalog and such. It doesn't really go much beyond that.
no, it doesn't.
So while the situation is somewhat interesting here with him propositioning himself onto you and other various
But
questionable things.
that's what happened in the 80s.
Yeah,
Exactly what you're seeing right here with Me Too today. This is what, I mean, and some ladies could handle that.
Yeah.
And for me, in a real life situation, I can tell you, all you have to say is no, and you can walk away from it.
Yeah.
This is different because this is a game, and we were doing what the script said.
Yeah.
And that's fine. There's no harm.
It should also be mentioned that, I mean, there are different situations in the game, and while it has become famous on the internet for certain situations, the game itself does actually allow you to
Look
go
at
in
that
other
face.
directions.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
These, to me, sometimes, there's some shots here through the office that do look like Polaroids just because of the lighting.
Okay.
And it could also be just because of the backlight.
And it probably was Polaroid. You're
It
probably
could be
right.
something like this, or
Yeah.
because this looks different from the others. The quality we're watching here is not from the source, but when I was remastering some of these shots, I kind of noticed that, like, hey, these shots are very different from. And I wonder if, do you remember if there were workers in this office at the time, or was it just after working hours?
I think it was after working hours.
Okay.
It was definitely a Sunday.
Yeah.
I love it. No, I don't want a taxi.
You want to ride that scooter.
Right. This is great. The reactions. And this is Michael just saying, okay, this is what's happening.
Right. That's a shot too.
Wowee. Such a close-up. No wrinkles back then. Look at that.
I would have to think that...
And we did, by the way, there's nobody on set to do your makeup, obviously. No one there to do my hair. You could see that. Yeah.
So you did everything yourself
well,
then?
it was just, just show up and do your thing. And when you're, when you're 29, that time was different than it is today. There's not these apps that make us look prettier and nicer and can do this and do that. It was just go.
There are apps though that can put actual chicken faces on you. So
yeah,
I guess that's something that it gave society is the ability to now put
also
chicken
when you're
faces
young,
on.
you're more confident as well.
Mm-hmm.
You're not thinking, oh, back then I was like, you know what? Oh, I wouldn't hesitate to wear high heels and something that showed my body because that's what we did.
That was part of the
And
product
it's different
that you're
when
providing.
you're, well, yeah, but when you're young as well, there's no fear and you're confident. Obviously, I had to be doing this. Nowadays, I'm like, okay, wait a minute. I need my makeup done and my hair, and I need some sleep.
Well,
Can you give me some water?
At Limited Run, we did try to provide you with some of these things, but you still have to do your own makeup.
Of course. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking about back then, there's just no fear.
Yeah.
You come in the way, the way you kind of, of course I put some makeup on, but I'm just looking at my hair. I'm like, did I not curl my hair? Is it not brushed properly? It makes me laugh.
I like your hair in this game, I have to say. But, I was born in the 80s, so this
It's looking like we're just looking now in the rain today.
Was this also your necklace? This is a different necklace.
Yeah, I
than
saw
the
that
old
necklace.
one.
I'm like, where did that one come from?
So this is the famous scene.
Yeah, it looks
here
like he's thinking that
Yeah.
he is asking me to do something different.
Yes, so very different from the other choices.
Yes.
And again, it does end up in a situation which is definitely out there, but your character does actually kind of circumvent it and get, you're strong enough to stand up to this. Yeah. And you as a person as well, you're pretty strong. You're a wrestler. You've always portrayed strong female energy, right?
Always. So yeah.
Even in this game, I think in some ways this has been portrayed as a little bit harsher than maybe the reality is. It's a very bad situation, but your character gets out of that situation by being cunning and being strong.
Right.
Look at this. He always has a different hat.
Yeah,
he started with a top hat.
Right. Now he's got to the police hat.
He got the police hat. He got the chicken mask. Now I'm curious. Did you see that chicken mask stuff while production, or
I'm trying to remember?
Did you discover this many years later?
I can't remember. Now look what's happening here.
Yeah.
Now I'm seeing that that shot right there looks different than the shot. Oh no! See, that's different.
Yeah.
See that white and black?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't white and black a minute ago because I just had a bra on.
Right.
So we had to have some kind of a wardrobe change in here.
Maybe it was shot a little bit earlier.
Probably.
Yeah.
Or this was shot later and the other was earlier.
Yeah.
Because as I remember, I think we shot in the parking lot first.
Okay.
I think all the scenes outside were shot first.
That was the first day of production then? Or you don't remember?
No, it wasn't the first day. I think that was another day.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but see, that's different. I don't see black. That looks like a bra that clicks in the middle.
Getting all the information we need here about your wardrobe.
Oh,
and here's
boy.
the censorship icon again. So
Yeah, but I'm covered.
You are covered. It should be noted that the game
now
itself.
This is the censorship that they did?
So yeah, in the game there is an optional censorship. Though in the game, if you do remove it, you are still clothed. So you never do actually take off.
Right.
This shot, by the way, too.
Listen to the music.
Did you come up with some of these kind of scenarios yourself, or was this in the script? Do you remember? Because eventually,
probably Michael saying, "I want it to look like," and I'm like, "Well," or maybe we wore this at the show,
right?
I may have wore that particular outfit at the show,
right?
I'm trying to think where that whip came from.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, was that Michael's whip or was it yours?
I don't know. Well, playing a bad guy, and I love Halloween, so it might have been mine.
Right.
Handcuffs, that's definitely
well?
From Hollywood and Vine are my characters, so I probably bought those.
Right. So you're kind of using
probably was my props.
Yeah, what's your props?
Yeah, I think everything's my props.
You brought this set yourself.
Yeah.
Well, you still like
props to the props.
If only you still had them, because then we could like take a picture of it and include in the game. You know, the original whip from Plumbers Don't Wear Ties. We'll put it up for auction. It really does enjoy these inverted effects.
I think I used to have it somewhere. It could be. Look.
He takes off as much clothes as you do.
I don't remember him taking off his
You
jacket.
probably blocked that out of your memory.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Isn't that
No,
interesting how we do that sometimes?
No offense to Paul. I mean, he's probably a
Sorry,
very nice
but
man.
you were in it, but I don't remember.
Right.
What?
Now these situations here,
Ride 'em cowboy.
I'm curious if you came up with this or if Michael came up with that.
Michael came up with that.
I can see why. Okay. It's weird that Michael did not also play Fashion.
Michael came up with all of it.
Now he has the drink back now.
Okay.
He's enjoying another drink. It looks very hot on this day. He looks...
So the sun is out
yeah.
in Southern California.
I wonder if
It's
that's why
warm.
they use these effects sometimes.
Why is
It's
the
just
chicken
to
head
sweat.
upside down?
Oh, well, we don't know. It's just one of those things.
Wow, no wonder when they
I guess-
reviewed it, it got all these interesting comments.
I think it's just because of the general just chaos that's ending up on screen here. Like, the story itself is somewhat nonsensical and it just diverges into chaos.
Right.
And it's also for just the sake of having... It does reuse a lot of images, right? So I wonder if they just... kind of like, well, invert colors here and turn it upside down.
Yeah,
'cause
let's just
that's the
make new
same.
things here and there. Because if you look at it, we have the apartment building,
Right.
outdoors, and the office building.
Yeah.
Those three. Which tells me those could be 3 different days only.
Yeah.
And that's when I'm thinking now that I'm rewatching this,
Hmm.
that we shot all of this one day.
Yeah.
The parking lot was also the same day. And then it had to be a different day for the apartment. Yeah.
I see.
So possibly it could have just been 3 weeks, 3 weekends.
Mhm.
We didn't spend obviously a lot of time on this.
So this is the other choice where, as we mentioned, you actually decline and run and kind of
Good
get away from
girl,
it.
look at that.
So the game itself does allow you to stand up for yourself. And even on the wrong choice as it is, you do stand up for yourself. And
And in
use
real
your-
life, can I say that happened to me?
Hmm.
Oh, look, I'm wrestling him. I love it. A nice scissor across the arm there.
You got
I
arm
like
scissor
it.
with your leg.
Yeah, I'm doing a leg scissor on his
Yeah.
arm. Exactly. And a heel to the face. I had a situation that came up like that, and I said no.
Yeah.
That's it. And I
Good for
knew
you.
to myself, am I going to lose this job?
Yeah.
I did not lose my job. But I stood up for myself. That is a true story. And I still had my job. I like that shot too. I'm tan, so this tells me it's summertime.
Now you have the shirt back on. So this
Oh,
this
you
tells
go ahead.
This tells me that this was shot on either before or on a different day from the office scenes, because now you have your jacket back on outside.
Right.
Now I am
Which would be the same day
right
as this.
That's all the other stuff.
Uh-huh. The
Now,
outdoor stuff.
I wonder though, did Michael ever ask you like to run around in your bra in public and you said just like, no, let's not do that? Or
It was a Sunday. There was no one around. I don't
Right.
think we had an issue with
So
it.
you wouldn't-
I just went, yeah, let's just
Yeah.
do it. I don't remember feeling it's like a bathing suit.
Right.
That's how I
Yeah,
looked
yeah.
at it. I felt okay. I
from
felt
your
fine.
modeling you probably
And I
wouldn't
don't
have
remember anybody watching us or coming up.
Oh, really?
Either. I do not remember anyone staring or looking. Or
I guess in LA it's just kind of,
Plus
well, of
again,
course.
now who's this?
I'm not sure. The Karate Woman is a narrator. This narrator actually comes in to take over the game, she says, and then berates you for making all the wrong choices
I
earlier. But Michael will come back and will
Like
dispose
she
of
appeared
her.
out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Now this is a whole different day.
Yeah, this seems to be have been shot different, like on a different day with just a small crew, because it has
Yes. And the sun is out. We can see shadow.
Yeah, mhm.
Totally different day.
Still wearing the flip flops though, but she's not wearing any shoes.
No, she doesn't need
on the
to. She's
inside.
in her gi.
So and a purple belt, I guess.
I
it
see
looks
that.
like So,
A nice shot to the jaw. Good for her.
And now we will be hearing about all the wrong choices we made. And
I love it.
Yeah, and yeah, it's interesting. Again, the game does sort of try to uphold a little bit of kind of moral.
That's good.
Quality in that sense, that it does actually point out that, like, hey, there are wrong choices, and you made all of them,
Right.
according to this. So,
Of course, the player's going to make all the wrong choices.
well, you know,
Come
you
on.
have to 100% the game. You know,
Who's
It's
going to
like-
play the boring? She leaves, she exits, she says no. I know I would want to see more.
Right. Yes, and now she actually is going over all of the choices.
Is that the
made.
script in her hand? Look,
I was going to ask you. Do
that's
you
the script.
Okay.
It has to be.
So that's actually the prop. That's the script. We do have a copy of the script digitally. The original Word document that he's printed out.
I would love
we'll show
to
it
see
to
that.
you. Yeah. So
that's cool.
It's not that, you know, for a script, it wasn't that long, obviously,
No.
as a game.
Right.
And also what I noticed when looking at it was there wasn't really anything. I was wondering if we were going to find scenes or dialogue or something that wasn't used. Like some
Some deleted scenes. Did you find that?
we didn't find any other than
What format did you get this on?
So we got like floppy disks and such.
You did. Floppy disk. I
Mhm.
remember those. Okay.
We got everything that does exist. There doesn't exist.
Did you have to find a new machine to, like, an old machine to play that?
we-
Wait, floppy disk was the one that went into the computer, right?
Yeah.
They were like
The
yellow,
small
orange,
diskettes.
different colors.
Yeah, they could be. And then that had various documents on it.
Oh my goodness.
And we did extract, like the images,
Right.
we extracted from the actual game code.
Interesting.
We do have a separate commentary for the development and tech on this game as well.
Oh,
with
cool.
Joe Modulewski and George. No last name.
I love it. But no deleted scenes?
So, in terms of deleted scenes for this game, there was a PC version actually
Okay.
released that doesn't seem to have made it much into retail. We don't really know. There's very little documentation on it.
Mm.
That game does have some additional footage and content, which we are calling deleted scenes just because publicly most people haven't seen it.
Right.
But in the script, those are actually mentioned.
Okay.
So I wouldn't say that they're deleted as they did make it into a version of the game. That PC version seems to have been made after the 3DO version, if I'm correct. So it's probably just materials that they were like, well, we have it, let's just put it in.
Yeah.
For whatever reason they did on 3DO, because there's nothing really questionable about it or anything. It's
now,
just extra.
he marketed this to who, what, where back then?
So generally, this game had to be ordered from magazines, in the back of magazines,
Okay.
gaming magazines and stuff would have
Right.
listings, and generally
Interesting.
that's where you could find it. They're holding hands, yeah. What a nice. This is a nice
Nice
shot
touch.
as well.
And I'm like,
You don't like that. This is a
love it.
very good shot, though. I
That's
actually like
great.
this very much. Now, I remastered all the images myself for this, and I want to. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the other commentaries and interviews I've done. But I wanted to tell you one thing was that to do this, not to get too technical, but you have to train a computer to recognize faces in order to reproduce them at a higher quality.
Okay.
This is very scary technology. But I basically had to take a lot of your images from this game as well
Right.
as from Glow, everything I could find of you.
Okay.
And then the computer will learn what you look like and reproduce that at a higher quality. So
wow.
it basically redraws you
Look at that.
artificially. Yeah.
That's Glendale
now
for
you
sure.
have no shirt on. So
Oh boy. Is that a banana peel?
it looks like
Oh, I
because
love it.
he's going to slip
I
on
love
it.
bananas anyway, so there you go. Look.
When I was remastering your images, though, so I have to train them for
This
each
looks
individual person. And
Lake Hollywood.
that's- yeah.
Lake Hollywood.
This is
Look,
all-
Hollywood. I love it.
Look at this.
Roman's Chinese?
Yep, it's all in Hollywood.
Yeah,
basically.
see? Oh my
That's basically
goodness.
a production shot, huh?
Okay, so this is, oh my goodness.
Do you remember this? Like, do you just remember the?
I do now.
Going to all these.
Oh my gosh, do you know where that is?
It's like the
Hollywood Bowl.
Yeah, that's where the Disney concert and stuff. Something
That is, you guys. Oh, and I love the
Griffith
Griffith
Observatory.
Observatory.
I used to work in LA, so I've been
Oh,
to these.
I love all these iconic places.
I wish we could go on like
Where's
a location
James
tour.
Dean?
Yeah,
Look, James Dean walked around all this.
yeah.
Oh my goodness, you could not do that today, people. There's no
That's
way.
a good shot too, by the way.
Pulling the hair.
Yeah,
that looks like
pulling
downtown LA. Oh, that's Chinatown?
Chinatown.
Oh my God. Now those people are staring at us, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Oh, they must have thought we were nuts.
This is not what they see every day in Chinatown, huh?
Look, there's people. Look.
Yeah.
They're taking
photos.
pictures,
yeah.
That's downtown. That's
I think that poster is fake, by the way. I think that's added in post, as they say.
Well, I think the Schubert Theater or whatever that theater down there in Century City.
Yeah.
Here's a girl running around, so what, in her bra.
Look at that guy. Do you remember this? Because I have a suspicion he just sat there and ate ice cream and you jumped up to him.
That could be the photographer.
Do you think so?
No. I'm just saying.
I think you just jumped on him.
That's Travel Town. I probably picked these places. I love all these places that we're at.
Right.
Travel Town. Look at that.
This is where I think it really comes off how much
shot.
fun you guys have.
Damsel in distress. Yeah. Love
Production
it.
shot.
That's, you know where that's at? I know exactly. That's
by the train station, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's on Bell Street.
Yeah. I used to go there all the time.
So do you know how long it would take to run through all of those areas? There's one of the vendors.
I have a feeling
that's Hamlet.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I should be exhausted by now. He looks like he's going to have a heart attack.
Town. Yeah.
That must have been a long day. And in the hills.
Do you remember what this building was? Is it just, did you find an abandoned building just like, let's steal a shot here? Or was it something Michael owned? Did he have property? Because
no clue, guys.
This is just like an empty building, right?
It is an empty building.
And kind of decrepit, and there's some filing, there's some furniture. I always assumed, wow, that's a risky shot.
Wow. I had a red polka dotted bikini, so.
Matching his tie.
That wasn't, that's
I don't think that was planned.
That was not planned. Look, those are apartments over there.
Yeah. So I was wondering if this is maybe Michael owned this and renovated it or something.
Yeah.
Because it seems...
We're going to need to ask Edward.
Yeah. I will absolutely ask him when we speak to him about this. It's a good shot too.
Yeah, that's a great shot.
Speaking of Edward, as I was mentioning to you, I was remastering your images, but I had trained the computer to look at different people, and that's different modes basically. I would have to select you to reproduce images of you. I made mistakes sometimes, and I would have you on Edward. So I would reproduce this image of Edward, but it would recreate your face on him. I'm not sure if I'm going to add that in the
well,
in the
it kind of would go with the storyline, sort of the way it goes
I
here.
did keep a few of those mistakes,
That's
so
funny.
maybe I'll show them off
I'd like to
in
see
like
that.
the Plumb the Depths mode.
Wow.
So this enters the last part of the game here where there's a negotiation going on. How much...
what am I must be saying, don't?
Yeah, you're basically telling him not to
Don't
kill
kill
him.
him.
Yeah.
Oh, don't kill him.
And then Thrasher will start saying that he just wanted to spend some time with you. And he's willing to pay for it.
There's that internegative looking shot.
Yeah, it's weird. Now we're back to the narrator for the last time here. She's now no longer in the gi. That's actually somewhat of a nice dress.
Cute little dress.
Yeah. So I'm really not sure.
I wonder where he found her from.
Yeah, I'm
again,
guessing,
it might have been a friend or an actress.
No, there's Michael again. He's coming back to take over
This
production.
toy gun.
Yeah, toy gun. And he actually
You
does...
could not get away with any of this today.
No.
Oh my goodness.
And it does this kind of mafia hit job on her.
Wow.
So, but as you were saying, though, you guys were just having fun on set.
Yeah.
There was never a bad day, huh?
Never a bad day.
No.
Absolutely not. This was all fun.
Because when I contacted you to take part in this production, you've been very generous with us and actually taken a lot of interest in this, and we're very happy about that. But generally, you always spoke so highly of the fun you had, and this was something I wanted to talk to you about for this commentary, which is, it sounded so much like you guys just had fun.
We
overall.
did. We did have a good time. This was just, it's something that we also were able to put on our resumes when we were trying to get a resume together. And I think I did have this as a video game. I think I have this on the IMDb as a video game as well.
I actually,
Do I?
yes, you do now because I added you.
Thank you.
Because I did notice that it was a little bit incomplete, and so also
Beautiful.
Edward
was not credited under his real name, proper name.
Right.
So I added him as
Great.
well. So
that's why I saw it. That's why it's there, because you put it there. I see.
This is also a very funny shot here of him just aiming that toy gun, obvious toy gun at himself.
Yes, and the helmet.
Did you ever get any kind of production stills or anything after the production was over?
No, we did not.
You did not, no.
No, sadly we did not. It's just kind of like doing your gig and going to the next gig.
Yeah.
You know?
Do you remember what your next gig was right after this? Do you kind of remember where you went straight after this?
I'm trying to think.
It would have been 93, 94-ish, so.
Right. Well, I had my company started, so I was wrestling. So I'm still wrestling here.
Still
and,
to this day?
Yeah, and still doing games. There was a lot of game shows back then. A lot of those 90s dating ones. Dating Game was one during this time.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because on all of those shows, I was the luckiest person back then. I was winning.
Yeah.
Winning, that's not even a,
you win at a dating show.
But there was quite a few different game shows that I had done. And once one company had or production company had your name, I don't know how they would get, other ones would come and say, we got your number from da-da-da-da. And I'd go and audition. And there'd be another one.
Also back then, it was no YouTubing, there was no internet. So once you found a talent that was good for TV, someone that was obviously as beautiful as you are, but also had the personality, because you were a wrestler.
And can't even talk. The word I'm using is when you're reliable. I can't say today.
Just say, and when you're reliable.
Yes, and because I was very reliable.
Yeah.
For the on these shoots, if I said I was going to be somewhere, I was always there. And on a set, you show up early.
Yeah.
You do not show up late.
I mean, you were even such a strong personality that you were on a game show with Sting, the wrestler, right?
That's right. We did 15 episodes.
Yeah.
15 episodes. Well, let me just tell you, against WCW. Regardless of what some of our answers were, I just knew to hit that button, not think later. Punch the button and then figure out and I'm like, and I blurt out something stupid sometimes.
So this sequence here goes on for a long time. It's a negotiation of your price, kind of what you're worth. And I have a feeling here, because I think the script doesn't really go through this as much. So I also felt like this must have been improvised on the spot maybe a little bit. And there's a lot of jokes and just kind of small
talk here.
Yeah, just small talking. And I'm wondering.
So you must, say, just go with it.
Yeah, and kind of pad out a little bit.
And it could have been towards the end of the day as well. Right. Everyone's getting tired,
At least it's summer in LA, right? So you're not getting cold standing there.
I'm not.
Without a top on.
And I'm tan, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is back up in the building again.
This is an apartment that's renovated, or being renovated rather.
It's so weird how we remember certain things, but not all things. Like going through the marketplaces, that brings back lots of memories.
What was your main memory when I contacted you for this, like when people would mention Plumbers Don't Wear Ties? What was kind of the main memory you had for the longest time?
Well, at first, I had just done the gig, and that was it. So it wasn't even in my mind. And then as the internet and we had emails and people could find you, put in searches for your name, I started getting the emails from people all over the world.
Yeah.
And they would either say they loved it or they thought it was the most hilarious thing in the world, or people just went, oh my God, we hated it. Or we have a fan club in Amsterdam and it's all of those things. And then I started looking it up, and then I saw it on YouTube, and I saw a lot of views, and it just brought back a lot of good memories. But you never know, some of the jobs that you may have done would come back 30 years later or whatnot, and be a cult,
right?
Type of thing.
So this is the wrong, I guess the bad ending when you walk out with
Thrasher.
Him. Now he was your friend though, so I guess.
Yeah, he was my friend. Yeah, Paul was my friend.
in real life, it would be a good ending. Just
It's a
going.
great ending
Yeah.
for me and Paul. Plus, I got him the gig.
Did you have contact with him after his game as well?
Not so much.
So this would
you
be
know,
the last...
we would have worked together
Right.
back in the day, but people move on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to think where I lived in '93. I think I'm in North Hollywood.
Yeah.
And after '93, you were asking me, '94, '95, I remember doing a lot of working for Jägermeister and Budweiser and Miller.
You were doing commercials then? Or
No, those were like, we were promo girls for the company. We were called Jaeger Girls, and we'd go to a lot of events. And again, and then we would do our lingerie shows. So while you're trying to do the acting, these are your side gigs.
Yeah.
And those were our side gigs. This is another one here. And then there was Playboy too, because I did a few different issues of the different issues that Playboy, like they would have like the Office Girls
Right.
of the Office, or different ones.
So here we're going into the real ending where you actually do end up with John. John and Jane, I guess it does have some, like a little bit of Tarzan inspiration, but...
I love it. Oh, there he goes.
Yeah, now he's telling him off.
There's a lot to this game. I mean, there's not a lot. There's not a lot to the game, but there's the 40 minutes that they put into it.
I have to say,
just look at the background, guys.
Yeah, it's just...
like bizarre.
Just random furniture. It looks like some older furniture. So
I'm assuming we would shoot where there was nobody.
Yeah.
You know, so there would be no
There's
sound.
not even a floor here. You know, no carpeting, no nothing. So it must have been a
But
building.
it must have been something of Michael's, because we
Yeah.
wouldn't have gone any place that we weren't allowed to be in.
Right, yeah. I have to say, like, you and Edward look, great all for the game, but Paul looks like he's getting a little bit tired,
Irritated.
a little bit irritated,
Yeah,
a little
yeah,
bit
yeah.
sweaty.
Mhm.
You know, his hair is getting unkempt. I'm guessing this now goes towards the night, and it's just getting hot in this building. You can kind of see that also.
Are we a little moist on our faces?
A little bit. You know, you can see the 5 o'clock shadow coming in pretty heavy on Edward. So I think this must have been the longest day based on everyone's
You're funny.
expressions.
He's Italian, right? So am I.
Yes,
So am I.
Yeah. Fasulo is his last name, Edward Fasulo.
Yes.
And after this, he would go on to make a movie for himself.
That's right.
A Christmas movie. And we're actually recording
that's
this around
nice.
Christmas time. So I guess it will be the company Christmas movie this year.
Right.
But he does a speech here.
Look at my hair. It's just like we were running around all day. I mean,
And I think
like you
also
said, it
getting
was
hot,
probably very
yeah.
warm in that building.
Do you? I know you don't remember too much which days and stuff this was, but this comes off to me maybe as one of the last days. Yeah, I'm
It
not sure.
probably was
Yeah.
the last day.
I think that's the mother.
Is that the mother?
Yeah. Do you remember which actress that was at all?
I do not know this lady. I don't remember.
Maybe it's Michael's mother.
It could be.
Yeah. She actually does a fairly good job as well. She's one of the funnier characters.
Or it could have been a friend of Paul's.
Yeah.
You know, my job was just to get Paul.
He ends up with her.
Oh, he does?
Yeah, so everyone ends up
Perfect.
there.
It's like a big bag of C's candy, but it's not. Didn't say C's on it.
This is also a very nice shot, by the way.
Yeah, that's
I
a
like
nice
that.
shot. 2 kids having a good time.
Yeah.
Put your clothes on, Jane. Doesn't he say that? Take your damn clothes off.
Take your damn clothes
That's
off.
what it is.
Yeah.
Take your damn clothes off. Yes, and those were some of the emails that I got too.
Is
People
that
saying
just a subject line? You guess? It's like, I wonder if it's a fan or some
That's
harassment.
the cover.
Yes, that is the famous cover that is
Yeah.
on the cover shoot.
That's great.
Yeah, and this goes back to the Sunday where we were
Yes.
just shooting all this.
Right,
It's
and
actually
it's
not
overcast.
the same time. Yeah.
And we had May gray, June gloom.
Mhm.
So again, this could be June.
Yeah.
Or May or July, and we're having no sun because we would always have that up until 2 o'clock in the
Right.
afternoon. This was definitely morning. I know that.
That's a great pose he's striking
Look at
there.
him.
We wanted to find that chicken mask. We have not found it. If someone out there has
Did you
it-
ask Michael?
We haven't been able to locate him,
yeah.
other than we got some email correspondence, but
Nothing
not
as of late.
Yeah, so as of this point in the production, we're not sure. But
Now, if this is 30 years ago, I'm thinking, how old is Michael back then? He was older than us.
yeah, he looks
He
like
might
he
have
is
been 50,
his,
so he could be 80
yeah
right
he's
now.
getting up, probably getting up there in age.
I want the Hollywood ending. That's funny.
We did talk to him, obviously, to get this game, and he was surprised by. We did ask him kind of what his feelings were that like we are coming in, remastering it. And
Right. What did he say?
Yeah, he was just very surprised, but he was happy
Good.
to that fact that like something has survived.
Good
and
for him.
Kind of, this, for.
And I'm
all
sure
its-
his head is in a different place than it was.
Yeah, I believe he is in exercise and dieting or something like this.
Are you talking about Edward?
No.
Are you talking about Michael?
Michael.
That's what I
yeah,
thought. Okay.
Yeah. He did go on to do some diet video systems or something like that.
Okay.
So he did go into other business. I think most of everyone included in this production went on to other business.
Yeah.
And you today make soaps. You still wrestle. So
Oh, yeah.
you all ended
I'm
up in
still
a good place in
wrestling.
life.
And of course, the soap is just a side gig. It's calming.
Yeah.
It's relaxing. And that came about before COVID.
Right.
I was just like, oh, how do you make this?
Yeah.
Oh, I like this. No preservatives? Oh, it's great.
I'm
This is over by the freeway too, by the way, the 134 freeway
Right.
in Glendale.
Mhm. I'm curious, and I'm guessing the answer is no, but do you remember Michael saying something about let's make another game at some point?
I do
or,
not
yeah.
remember that.
So there was no talks of doing Plumbers 2, The Return.
But
Nothing
I'd do
like
it
that.
again if I had to.
Well, let's see. You never know. Would Jane be making soap as well?
Sure, why not?
Why not? We're having we're scripting right here, right now. But yeah, we'll see.
I love the eyeliner. I still do that. Look
Yeah.
at that. Amazing. Some things just don't die.
Well, as I say, you haven't changed much at all. It's really amazing. And it was interesting also when I was remastering it, it's not too outdated in terms of the fashion, and there's
Right.
some like shoulder
It's
pads.
80s.
and-
But
this
it's
is like-
80s stuff. I still
Yeah.
have the skirt. I have
And it-
pumps that look the same.
And that's come back also.
Of course, of course. Yeah. That can still go today. That outfit right there.
Totally.
Oh, yeah.
You were asking me like, should I bring something? And I was curious how much of this wardrobe you would have now.
I have the skirt. I can
Yeah.
have the top similar.
Yeah.
Not the jacket
Mhm.
and the heels.
Yeah, the jacket was what I was most curious about if you
I know.
had.
We
'cause-
talked about that.
Yeah. It's really cool.
Yeah, I wish I had that. I probably had it for a while, but when I went through some of even my wrestling boots, there was a pair of wrestling boots. I have no idea why I got rid of my pink wrestling boots
Mhm.
with the skulls on them. Like, why would I do that? I kept other ones. Why did I get rid of those? It just, whatever I was going through, My nails aren't that long, but they're dark. They're either light or they're dark.
Yeah. So how many people do you remember kind of in general, what was the full cast of production here? Do you remember how many people were involved that you saw? Was it generally just like 4 people on set? Was it 10 people?
No, it was way less than that. It was
Yeah.
always just the talent
Mm.
only, and Michael is all I remember.
So Michael was
I just thought
basically
Michael did everything.
Yeah, he
That's
was
what
like
I
a
thought.
one-man show
Yeah.
for this. Yeah, I'm curious kind of what, in general,
And we
he
probably
thought
got
of
in
video
one
games,
car
huh?
and went.
Yeah, all huddled into a car.
Hmm. And I was living in the valley, so I was living nearby. I don't know where Edward was living.
I believe Edward was mostly based in Florida for most part of his, but at this
But
time he was
here-
modeling. Yeah,
He
so
had
maybe
to be in California somewhere. I
I'm
don't know
guessing
where.
he also maybe did some men's underwear
great.
stuff. It says here that it's ready for the full Hollywood ending, which is, I mean, a little bit of a nod maybe to you being
I
Hollywood.
think so. I didn't see
Yeah.
that. See? That's great. I love it. I liked doing this. This
Yeah.
was fun.
I'm glad it was fun.
When I
not really
watching this all over again, we had a good time, and I'm
Yeah.
glad I did it.
I'm glad you had fun. I mean,
Yeah.
this was something that we were very curious about. Was kind of your
I have
feelings
good
on
memories,
production.
and you know what? That's the cool thing, because if I didn't
Right.
have good memories, we wouldn't be sitting here talking
No,
about it.
absolutely not.
So it was something that I figured was up and up. I knew this was going to be a porn or anything like that, because
Right.
that's the first thing that you think about when someone says, "Oh, do you want to do a video game?" That's the
Mm.
first thing that was going through my mind. Is this going to be a pornographic type of
Yeah.
game?
Mhm.
Because I'd never heard of 3DO.
Right.
And yes, there's a little bit of that shower, that just posing. We're just posing for photos.
Right.
Is what was happening. I don't think there was video during that.
No,
It's
it
just
doesn't seem
photos.
like it. Yeah.
Mhm.
There exists no video of these.
Yeah, there's no, but it's
sequences.
all photos. Yeah.
Yeah. So, no, generally it is very
That's
much
right.
within
Well, when
modeling.
I see rewatching again, I'm envisioning it as video,
Right.
even though it's all these stills everywhere.
Because you were acting out these
Right,
scenes.
exactly. Yeah.
So, did you do many takes, or was it mostly just because he probably knew that this wasn't going to be video? Was it very much just like, okay, good, like an Ed Wood kind of
Style.
Yeah.
That's what I think it was.
Right,
Ed
yeah.
Wood style for sure.
It is
Click, 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 click. It was quick and easy.
Yeah.
Of course, there's video in the beginning.
That's the only video.
That's
yes,
the only
which,
yes,
which
the
is
beginning.
shot probably in
course.
someone's apartment.
But see how you're starting to watch it and you're still envisioning it
Right.
as video. Look at that. We're going.
It's a nice shot again of you two. I wish there was a better shot of you two on that
Right.
scooter, just kind of like the album cover,
Right. That's definitely Glendale. I'm
yeah.
trying to see what that street says, but see the brown
Yeah.
on the streets? I wonder whose bike that was.
Yeah, I am really curious
That I
if
don't
that
know
was
either.
just Edward's own or not. But,
It might have been his.
Yeah, because he has the leather jacket, he has the helmet, and he knows what he's doing. So
Now, if I was the person, I'd be going, end this thing. End this thing. There.
and that is the ending, actually.
That's very cool.
Edward J. Foster. His name is not Foster.
Look,
That
and
was
they
his-
spelled mine correct. I love
Yeah.
it.
I guess Foster was maybe just his, acting name.
Probably his acting name.
So, what would this
Harry.
is Harry Armis, but you recognize that?
I think
as
it's Michael.
Yeah. So that is just,
Giovanni, I told you.
Yeah, Juarez.
Yep. Oh my
Samantha
goodness.
Eggersol.
I know he's on Facebook too, Giovanni.
Is he?
Maybe we could find him.
Maybe we'll get some comments from
Yeah, I
old
think we
Giovanni.
should.
And
Yeah.
absolutely, the Fire on Mets. Do you remember any?
Mm-mm.
Grant
And good old
Swanson?
Grant Swanson.
Do you remember any of the Daniel Taylor? See their
I
names?
don't know any of
no,
them.
nothing.
Mm-mm.
No.
Samaya Young. That sounds familiar.
She looks like she could have been.
She looks like she could have been a
some
wrestler.
talent. Yeah, right.
Paul Levine.
Ray Wilkins.
I love
for
it.
Saiga's Speedway. Producer and friend.
Oh, that's great.
And that's Michael. He said. So.
And that's Michael too.
Look
I'm
at that
pretty
picture.
sure.
Though.
That's great. In the Porsche.
Yeah.
Wow. How come I didn't get to drive the Porsche?
Who knows? Michael's.
Oh,
look at that.
that was nice.
That's a nice shot. Jeannie, it was wonderful to sit down with you and talk about this game. Thank you so much for joining us on this commentary.
Thank you so much. This was fun.
And
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you for purchasing this game and checking out all this extra materials. Do also check out the development commentary. Hello everyone, this is the developer commentary for Plumbers Don't Wear Ties Remastered, or whatever name we are actually picking for this title. At the time is undecided when we record this. I am the lead producer on this game, Audie Surley, and I'm joined today by the lead programmer on the game, George. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is George. I am the lead programmer on the Plumbers Don't Wear Ties, the new version that we're making. I'm glad to be here, Audie.
Do you have a last name, or are you keeping this out for legal reasons?
I'm keeping this out for legal reasons, 100%.
We're also joined by the development lead at Limited Run, and also on this game, Joe Modulewski.
Hi, you just said my name.
Yeah, I'm putting your whole name into this.
Yeah, I'm Joe Modulewski. I'm the development director at Limited Run Games, and I am the director on Plumbers Don't Wear Ties, name TBD. At the
Name
time
TBD.
of this recording.
That's the final name, actually.
That's the final name.
That's the subtitle. So yeah, this commentary, thank you so much for unlocking it in the Plumb the Depths. We're going to go through a little bit of the history of us getting this title on our desks and figuring out what do we do with this. It was quite the journey, and I came in a little bit later. So Joe, why don't you kind of take us through when you heard about the fact that we were doing this the first time?
Yeah, this is one of those things that just sort of floated across my desk one day. Josh had acquired the rights to this and wanted to re-release it in some fashion, but he had no idea what he wanted to do with it. It was just like, we should do something. This, I think initially the idea was this would be funny. We should do something with this. But I tend to like to take projects and treat them with a seriousness that sometimes maybe they don't deserve, and that ballooned into where this project led. And Audie, you probably remember early on, before you were a part of this project, we spoke about this. And I came to you and I said, hey, I've got some ideas for how I want to approach re-releasing Plumbers. And the general idea was, hey, we should put together a package that isn't necessarily just the game, but it's about the game.
Yeah, I certainly do remember this because at that time, I think my reputation in the games industry was pretty much cemented with Digital Foundry that I know bad games and I know how to do bad games. And yeah, you gave me a call. This is before I was hired by Limited Run. It kind of brought this to my attention and kind of the idea of we don't want to make this just a joke. We want to do something actually kind of clever here. And we discussed at length how we could make a package about the context of how this game comes to be, but not so much just like remaking it image for image and say like, well, that's it. That's all we do. So I thought the premises of what you guys wanted to do at the time before I joined was kind of interesting, but I was curious how this is going to end up.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that we had a base idea. I had an idea in my mind, for lack of a better word, of like what a vibe of this package was going to be, what I wanted to see in the end. But I had no plan on how to get there just yet. It was still really early. We had a lot of other projects we were working on. It was just kind of floating in the background. But I do think you make a really good point that I want to kind of hone in on. We didn't want the package to be a joke. Because really, at the end of the day, if you want to find humor in Plumbers, which is what people have been doing for the past couple decades or whatever, there is no joke about Plumbers funnier than just the content of the game itself, and that can speak for itself. We can't make a package that's, one, it doesn't feel appropriate to make a package around it.
Yeah.
Right, that's trying to be funny. And two, if your goal really is to try and be funny, you're not going to make something that's funnier than some of the content in here on its own. So we knew immediately, like, I don't want to lean into that. I think what's way more interesting than any of the laughs people have had about this game is the contextualization of the game, like what the industry was like at the time it was made, how something like this could get made, and the little bit of as much stories we could get about the people who were involved. Everything about that is way more interesting than, hey, let's make fun of this.
And I mean, it might sound completely ridiculous to go into a project like Plumbers Don't Wear Ties and say, well, let's not make fun of it. Like, you would think that's the initial reaction for all developers, just like, well, this is a joke. Let's not treat it as any more than a joke. I've always been of the kind of, my comedic thoughts on this is that, well, there's nothing funnier than the actual effort that went into this game, which was quite massive, and we'll get into that throughout this commentary. But yeah, as you were saying, we wanted to kind of make, from before I joined and even after, we wanted to make a kind of document, an archive of the industry at the time, the medium, the CD-ROM medium. Why was this so important to the games industry? What kind of direction did it go in, and how did that direction lead into the bottom of the barrel where a game like this could exist, right? And at the time when you started on the project, we certainly didn't have access to original documentation, actors, people involved with the game. So
no, none of that stuff had come through yet.
No, that came through pretty late, actually, because it took a long time.
Well, that was a lot of effort from your end. So like that was one of those things that I basically had the idea of what I wanted, and I kind of was along for the whole ride to make sure things came along the way I wanted them to come along. But you really took that ball and ran with it. When you came onto this project, you had a very similar vision to me of what it should be, and you kind of really took the momentum and made a lot of these things happen.
Yeah, because at the time when you started the project, way back when you announced it, because this has actually been in active development in some capacity.
I'd be loose with the word active.
Yeah, I mean, hey, activity is, it can be whatever, but it had been kind of active in the company since its announcement. There had been kind of, discussions, sketchings, just theoretical sketchings of what this package could be. So there's always been something. And when I joined, you guys had already kind of created a basis for where this wanted to go, and it was easy for me, especially considering you're pretty good at laying out a product. That's one of your kind of special skills. So it was very easy for me to come in as a producer fairly late, actually, and say like, well, all of this I can build on. This is laid out really well, and the programming as well at the time was fairly well laid out. So how about we kind of introduce, where did George come onto this?
So George came on, I don't remember if George was on this project from the very start, because again, you mentioned when we first announced this, there was a plan.
Yeah.
There was an idea, but that was a while ago.
It was a little later.
I think we intended to ship it within a year of announcement, and then it just sort of ballooned in scope of what we wanted to do. I think, George, you did come later. And then I assigned this to you because I thought it was supposed to be a very small scope project. And I thought, hey, this is a great project, because George is doing development support at this company.
Yeah.
He helps a lot of the developers we work with on external published limited run titles. And I wanted to give George a chance to do a little bit more of what he's educated in, which is programming. So we gave him this.
I don't even remember when this came across my desk, but I remember thinking to myself, wow, this is something that we want to do as a company, huh? Very interesting.
So I want maybe, elaborate isn't the best word, but what I want to do here, George, because there's a couple things that are interesting about this. One, you're the programmer in this, so you had to learn a lot about this game that you'd never heard of before.
Right.
And two, you're a bit younger than us, so the entire industry that spit this game out, you're not really familiar with. So I guess, what were your initial impressions? We're going through some of these scenes now. What are your initial impressions?
I couldn't believe. Well, see, I mean, these were some of the scenes that I was like thinking to myself that surely there was no way a game like this could have come out back in the day. But because from my understanding, this game is even before my time, before I was born. And so I was confused. I was asking questions like, how are we going to get this past, certification? How is any of this going to be? Are we going to include these scenes in this new version? These things just kind of came up, and I didn't know just who to ask about this. I guess you were the one to.
I was the one that you asked, and we, I think I had answers for a lot of this stuff, and you'll see what the answers ended up being in the shipping product that you're watching right now. I almost said playing right now, but this isn't really a game you play. Look at that.
Look at that.
Look at that.
That's all what we all aspire to be, is this man on screen, Edward Fasulu. And could talk a little bit about just kind of these actors, at the time. And I'm curious, George, were you familiar with this game at all when you touched it?
I was not familiar with it at all.
You hadn't seen I forget his name. James Rolfe's video.
So that's how I learned more about it. That's what Joe suggested that I go ahead and watch. And I did watch it, and that's when I got an understanding of what this was.
Well, and I think the understanding you would get from James Rolfe's video, not only does it catch up to speed on what Plumbers is, it really encapsulates what the idea of Plumbers is for the following. When did that video come out? It was a decade ago, more than a decade ago.
Yeah, more than a decade at this point.
The entire idea of what Plumbers is in the gaming space comes from James Rolfe's video. Nobody knew what this was before James Rolfe did that video. So everyone's perception of it.
Yeah, in the mainstream sense, absolutely. I became familiar with the game just because I saw it in the back of a magazine in the 90s, and it had a print ad that was pretty much like the front cover of the 3DO release, which is a lot of weird words, a lot of weird screenshots, and I mean, that's basically what the game is, right? It's just weird sequences of images. So, George, when Joe comes to you and says, like, okay, let's lay this out, I'm kind of curious, what was the kind of technical skeleton of what you started doing at that time?
Well, I knew that, from the videos that I had seen, that the game itself to recreate wouldn't be super complicated to do at all. I started off working on a prototype of sorts in one specific game engine that, it unfortunately didn't pan out with that game engine, so we had to switch over to another one. But I think overall that was a change for the better. Some ideas got scrapped, some ideas did not, and I think now we have a better product overall.
Yeah. You're unsure of yourself as you say that.
You're talking about the point in time when we were gonna have a variety of like mini games.
Yeah, we
can talk about that.
We were thinking of building out some mini games, and then at a certain point we decided, because it was almost like 3 different things we were trying to do at once, and at a certain point it was around when you decided and told me, hey, we can't do this and we need to do an engine change. It was around the same point that we just started deciding we were going to hammer in really on the documentary or the contextual type of package over anything else.
Right.
And so the minigame stuff we felt was like, well, this doesn't really supplement the package we have decided we're actually trying to make now. So all that stuff got cut when we moved over to another engine.
We can talk about those things a little bit, actually, because I mean, at this point, the game is out as people are listening to this. But do you remember what those minigames were? Kind of what they were?
They were basically just clones of known games. We had what was it, Tapper or something like that?
There was a Tapper style one that was, I think, themed around the plumbing aspect.
Okay.
Right.
And then the whole plumbing thing led to me doing I won't say the name out loud because I don't, this is now a retail product. So but I had done a clone of a famous 2-player plumbing themed
very well
arcade game. I do remember being sad when we did that change and got rid of that stuff because I was actually pretty happy with
I was excited
what I coded for that. It felt really good. Maybe that'll live again another day.
That was the part that I was excited for too, because it's like, this is a game, but not really. But the mini games were actual games that we could have.
Well, and I think at a certain point, I made the comment that, hey, if we make these mini games too good, they become the focal point of the package because they're if you want to talk minute-to-minute gameplay, they were the quote-unquote best part of the package.
Yeah.
And we felt that distracted from the actual game itself, quote-unquote the game itself, and the documentary style content we wanted to build around the game. So it just made sense these things are too much of a distraction.
Yeah, I remember when I was brought on board this project on an official capacity in 2022 and worked on it pretty much consistently since that point. And I remember looking over some of these kind of long-term plans that have been in the game, like those mini games. And it was like, well, it should be mentioned in the commentary here that Joe is a pretty good game designer as well, and George also has some pretty interesting ideas and good execution. So it's something that will live on in another game, I think. But as Joe mentioned, when I looked at the whole package we were kind of going for, it did detract from, I shouldn't say the seriousness we were going for, but we had kind of coined the term interactive documentary before other products came on the market, which also have this tagline. Wonderful friends of ours that did those as well. So it was kind of like, those would be funny, but do they distract? Does it take away from either the levity or just the context of what the individuals in the game will be talking about? Because eventually we did get unprecedented access to the Plumbers' history through the original team that was involved. Then, of course, Jeanne, who's on screen here, is what's her name of the game again? It's like Jane.
Jane in the game, Jeanne Basone.
Yeah, Jeanne Basone in real life. Hollywood from Glow. And I knew her for a little bit before even joining Limited Run. So it was kind of natural for me to reach out to her. So Joe, I mean, when did this even get announced? Do you remember? I mean, it
I
was
don't remember
LRG3,
anymore. So
yeah?
it was an LRG3 when we announced this.
Yeah.
I don't remember if it was pre-pandemic.
I think
I don't
it
remember.
was, yeah.
It's hard. So Limited Run is an extremely fast-paced place. We
Right.
do a lot, and it is very easy for something that's 2+ years behind in my brain for it to get mixed up between years. I don't remember when we announced this, but I do know when we announced it, we had talked with Jeanne to do sorry, my brain just like melted. Jeanne or Jeannie?
Jeannie. Yeah.
Jeannie. What? Yeah,
It's hard because in the game she's Jane.
In the game she's
real
Jane,
name is
and when I
Jeannie.
saw her name spelled out for the first time, I
Yeah.
thought it was Jeanne, and when she said it out loud as
Yeah.
Jeannie, a little mixed up. Jeannie's involvement initially, she's involved in the announcement of it.
Yes.
So you had put us in touch with Jeannie
Absolutely.
quite early, but that was the extent of our plans with her at that time. She
Right.
was not going to be involved in the actual product or any of the additional marketing, but it just ended up being that we had her out here. We talked to her, and she was an absolute delight and had a lot of really cool insight into how this was put together. A lot of really fond memories of her time spent working on it, and she was like happy to talk about it. So we're like, wow, we should involve her a little bit more, and that kind of ballooned the whole thing.
Yeah, that was my feeling when so as I mentioned, I came in 2022, became an official part of Limited Run as lead producer on development. And I correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but I felt like the company had kind of earmarked me to join this project from the start. My first day at the job, actually, Josh was like, well, obviously, you're joining the Plumbers team. And I was like, oh, yeah, I guess, obviously. It's like, you flew me out all the way here from Oslo to say that. But I was very excited about it. And I had an immediate discussion with you at the time where, okay, as I mentioned, the skeleton laid out was really good. George had basically remade the game in quotation marks.
Yeah, we had a functional version at that time before Audi even showed up, right, George?
Yeah.
Right, correct.
It was fully functional, and there was kind of preliminary ideas for including the original images rescanned, which didn't pan out. We'll talk a little bit about that. But when I joined, the first thing I talked to Joe about was basically we should lean into the context around the game, make an interactive documentary style thing where the game and its context is complemented by all these smaller videos at the time. We didn't want to make a full-length documentary that could go just simply on a Blu-ray or something. We kind of wanted to cut them into chapters and have specific topics talked in depth that gave this game its context.
Well, what was important to me about that too is that if we did like a full-length documentary that was included, say, alongside the game, a Blu-ray or whatever, and it wasn't integrated into the game,
the software,
the concern was that players wouldn't engage with it, or that every player wouldn't see it. And we felt from the start, especially myself, I brought this up many times. There's absolutely some content in this game that I think requires some context, not only around the content itself and it being made, but in our intentions in redistributing it, right? And so it was very important from the start. They were like, no, this documentary style content, the story we want to tell here needs to be present in the software around what the player's experiencing. Otherwise, they may not notice it. And again, it goes back to right from the start, we knew that what we didn't want to do, even though this is what came across our desks initially, was just, hey, just do this. What we didn't want to do was just put the game back out, because what is interesting about that?
The internal mantra about the game when I joined was basically like, well, the greatest remaster for the worst game, and so the entire software had to kind of reflect that. And so, what do you do when you remaster something in film, in music? There's always documentation, documentaries, context supplied to showcase, okay, why was this work put into this product? And as you said, if we just made a Blu-ray with a few videos on it, I think a lot of people, not for just the sake of like, well, they aren't interested or don't really think about it, but a lot of people collect and they keep it sealed. There was like all these thoughts we had around it that was like, okay, we need to make sure that the software itself is contextualizing the game.
The software needs to tell the story that we are trying to tell around the software, right?
Right.
Like it needed to be very integrated. Now, I want to talk for a little bit about the remastering process. So, like, I want to start with George, and then I know, Audie, you have things to say about what we did. But
sure.
George, do you remember when this first started and we knew, like, okay, we're doing like a 4K version of this game? And what that first challenge was, looking at the material we had to work with? I want you to see, like, can you kind of walk us through what did you start with in terms of assets? And then how did you get what you have, and what our first step at trying to remaster this was?
I started off with a whole lot of images from the original game, and then it just came down to figuring out, okay, how can I make these assets cleaner, 4K, and if for those of you who have already played the game, you know that there are two different versions of those images, and the ones that I started off with, the ones that I that eventually made aren't the final ones. So I think Audie was the one that came in and really worked hard to make those final versions of those images.
We had some bad ideas initially. It was just like, well, do we just do like a nearest neighbor upscale to 4K of these things so that we preserve them exactly as they were? We tried a couple of different ways of bringing them, but we weren't really sure what the best way to remaster it was. And then, Audie came in and was just like, no.
Well, so the thing, there is a actual video kind of showcasing the process for this called Seeing Clear, I think, in the work design documents, at least that's the name of it. So do check that out in Plumber Depths. But the images that George was originally working with, I believe, was extracted from the PC version of this game. There was a 3DO in the PC version.
Yeah, everything's based off the PC version.
That's correct, right?
Remember,
it was the PC version.
You had a unique struggle in the beginning of this, trying to even sort out the structure of like, okay, what's the progression of all these images? How do we put together the timeline, all that stuff? Like, you remember sitting down, you had to figure all that out down to like the millisecond.
It was trying to figure out which scene follows the last, et cetera, and I was just trying to figure out, okay, I guess I have to watch a long play about this and then figure it out. And evidently that wasn't the case. Thankfully, there are fans out there who are extremely there are fans out there who I guess really love this game and managed to figure out what the order of operations was, which image comes after which, where do the decisions lead, and so that information was extremely helpful. What goes where.
Well, and it was the timing for the music and stuff too.
Oh, the timing for the music. Also, the fans definitely were able to help out with that.
You say fans, plural, but like we are not sure. It might be one person.
Might be one person.
I can confirm it's not me. There was suspicion. I remember when I joined the company. I was like, "Did you make this?" And I was like, "No." So I'm not that crazy. But yeah, it was like 640 by 480 images, BMP, I believe.
BMP, right?
Yeah, on the original. So not only, man, you had a lot of setbacks with that, because those images are index colored, so they have a lot of loss of information. Obviously, they're very low res in today's resolution. The modern TVs and such. You can smooth them out by like doing bilinear filtering and things like this, but it's still gonna look real bad. Right. And unfortunately, that was kind of where it was stuck with that feature for a long time, because there was no real answer to this. And people might be already thinking, well, AI upscaling was, already around. And yes, I mean, that was the answer in the end, but just generic AI upscaling won't help you at that point where we were.
Well, what's interesting about this too is, you were doing AI upscaling for this. So we got to kind of recontextualize the development here too.
Yeah.
When you proposed and you started doing the AI upscaling for these pictures, this was well before things like ChatGPT were in any sort of mainstream understanding. Like, this was a pretty unique idea.
I'm not aware. I mean, at the time of this recording, at least, which is a little bit before the final Gold Master, I am not aware of another game that, for photographic images, uses AI upscaling the way we did it.
Right.
Because when I joined the company and joined the team, one of my first conversations with you, George, was to create me a GUI because I needed something. I needed like a visual way to keep track of all this game is based on about 822 images, all things considered. There are some repeating images, so it actually goes down to about 700 something.
Right.
But basically, you know, I needed something. And what it came down to was that I had to, so I'll go into this in the video I'm doing about just image upscaling, but I had to create my own models. And I wanted to do it the ethical way. So I contacted both of the actors in the game. Jeanne Basone was, of course, involved, and also Edward Fasulu, and had them give me images that were from that time and also more recent, because they don't have like endless amount of images. Now, it is lucky for us that the two main actors in this game was models. So that meant that we had a lot of references for a lot of parts of their bodies. So image upscaling was a little bit easier from that standpoint. But basically it came down to that I had to create an individual model for Jeanne Basone, an individual model, AI model for Edward Fasulu, and then another one that was concentrating on backgrounds and composite together up to 4 or 5 different image upscales, and then kind of separate the layers between the different outputs for these individual models. So it was an extremely lengthy and difficult process that I will never do again, George.
I think the upscaling aspect, like remastering these photos, I think that's the most time-consuming part of the entire development.
Yeah, you asked me to calculate the time, and it took me about 9 months of actual like weekly effort, because I had to go back again and again, because the AI wasn't really, even with all the materials I had to create my own models and batch process all these images, there were just certain times where the actual information on the original images wasn't good enough. And so what happened was that the AI would try to appropriate a lot of details. And when you went back on just first eye cast, it would look fine. You'd look at it and be like, that's the image. Because you'd see the same colors and this kind of like same composition. But then when you look closer at it, it's like, hold on. Like, there's something really strange going on in the background.
Oh, you want to talk about, speaking of strange things, do you remember, I don't know if you were around for this, but do you remember the first attempts we made at doing any sort of AI upscaling for these, and everyone's skin looked like fried chicken?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And we actually joked for a while, like, should we include fried chicken mode? And have these images as like an alternate.
Yeah, I mean that is the trappings of AI upscaling. So the reason why I even know about it is that when I worked in Japan, the anime industry had started using AI upscaling, and so I worked on a lot with that. But that is very easy because it has very strong black outlines, 2 shades.
Right.
This kind of like AI is perfect for it. But for a photograph, is much more complex, and the usual trappings is that you get all this like wavy patterns on skins and stuff. It looks plasticky.
Right.
You get all this like noise introduced, and so we did get that with this as well. So I actually made a custom filter for the game, which mimicked like a kind of like a Kodak film look. I scanned my own personal family photos, zoomed in, and tried to replicate as much as I could that look. And that was definitely the lengthiest process, I think, of the whole game production.
This is my favorite part of the game. Just this sequence that is just them running around Hollywood, just like, just. So what Jeanne had told us, like, this whole sequence was them just like running around, having fun, taking pictures in random places.
Yeah.
Oh, we should talk about something. You know, maybe we shouldn't. I don't know. But there was a conversation that I think came up in the other commentary that's included in this package. But we had looked at some of these photos. We were asking about the sources for the photos because we wanted to see if we could find any further sources.
We had a few, actually.
Well, in what we talked about was Jeannie's memory was that some of these scenes were actually acted out.
Yes.
And her memory was that it was on film, on camera, and these were stills from that. And we tried to see if we could track down any source of that.
Yeah. So when we started going into production with actual access to the production people, and then Jeannie especially, she got us in touch with various people. Like Joe said, a majority of the game was filmed. You can see kind of like there is a lot of different types of image quality on even the original images. Some seem like they're Polaroids. Some seem like they have a lot of like motion blur. So it's clearly like from a still rather than like a actual camera.
We're seeing that right here.
Yeah. So a lot of this was acted out. And it makes me think that they probably filmed a lot of this thinking it was going to fit on a CD-ROM and then didn't really understand that there's a size restriction on how much video you can include, especially back then. Compression and whatnot, codecs were very different. We did have access to, so if people are wondering kind of like why didn't we just use those original images, it's because we only had access to 1 or 2 like Polaroids, I think, Jeannie found, and they weren't very good. They're very faded. I think it's like the one is where they are eating, it's in the credits, it's them eating together and kind of having this celebration for finishing the game production. So it's like that doesn't even help in terms of like the game scope. So yeah, we had no choice. We had to actually reconstruct these images as best as we could. And even then it was like I went on Google Maps because she gave me the address. It looks very similar still, this area. And so I managed to kind of find references even and draw in myself some details that the AI just couldn't do. It was an ordeal, but it was worth it though. I think it looks pretty good.
I'm
George, was it worth it?
I'm impressed by the amount of work you put into restoring these images.
Well, I just remember...
I'm impressed by the amount of work you put into restoring this game.
George, you're the superhero here because you did it. And I mean, as I mentioned, the game's skeleton was done. So you had already kind of done the majority of that work, but there's also Plumb the Depths, which is the mode you go into to unlock all this.
It's funny because the actual game itself was done for a while. It was the stuff surrounding the game that was going to take more time to build out. But the Plumb the Depths was fun to make. All the stuff around it was fun to make, kind of to make this interactive documentary, as we call it. And
yeah, I remember that like Plumb the Depths was a decision that was made, I think, shortly before I joined.
So Plumb the Depths was actually a decision that was made outside of this team.
Yeah.
It was more like, we got the package across our desk. They're like, hey, we want you to do this. And then there was just this random, out of nowhere thing where Josh was just like, I want this kind of mode in the game.
Yeah.
He had no idea beyond that. He didn't know what he wanted to be in it or like anything. He was just like, this has to be in there. So it basically fell on us to like kind of figure out, okay, well, we should do this. And I've come to actually quite love Plumb the Depths. I think that's when you got a first version of it that was working visually the way I wanted to see it.
Yeah.
Then I was like convinced. I was like, okay, this is great. But
I have to admit too that I was very unsure of this mode. I heard about it, and then it was always it was structured out. It was on paper, and I was just looking at it, and I was like, I don't know. I'm very unsure. And then as we started getting assets, we'll talk a little bit about just the general visual design of everything else as well. But once we got the assets for the maze, and we kind of got, because I knew that we were kind of looking at, Joe had told me like, hey, the screensaver from Windows 95, like that the maze.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we're looking at. And I was like, okay, era accurate, that's fine. But how do we actually technically do this and make it fun and kind of, fit this whole package? But George, I mean, that was something, man, I think I only saw like one prototype before I was like, man, you nailed it.
Yeah, I surprised myself too. I was concerned that maybe that was something I wouldn't be able to pull off, but no, I'm happy that I was able to, and we've made significant improvements upon it. I mean, you folks at home are already playing it probably, so
Well, we don't know. We can't commit to improvements because what if for whatever reason between the time we record this and we ship the game, we decide to do something that ruins Plumber Depths?
Yeah, why did you do that,
What
George?
if by the time this game ships, Plumber Depths isn't even in the game? I don't know.
Oh, that'd be something.
That would be...
Well, now we just...
Then where are they unlocking this content? Where are they
We'd be on the Lost Media wiki right now.
Yeah.
But no, I think it's going to be in there. Or else I'm demanding a bonus. But like...
Somebody's trying to lock us in this door.
Right? Well, that's fine. This is where we were meant to end anyway. But yeah, I mean, Plumber Depths was one thing, right?
It was really tricky. Like you said, like I don't think there was a unified idea from the start. Like, oh, we know exactly what we're doing.
I
with
think
this. And
that
I don't think there was a unified like confidence either.
Yeah,
but
because you were not sure, George. I remember you coming to me and it's like, how do we actually do this?
Yeah.
And do we have to do this? And I talked to Josh a little bit.
And I was like,
yes. Yeah, it was like, you have to go out, leave my office right now. And it's like, all right, Josh said politely that we should do this. And, it was like...
It's the right call in the end.
Absolutely.
Even if he had no idea what he actually wanted out of it, forcing us to include it, I think in the end made us make something neat out of it.
Because it became sort of like a binding... We were already kind of like, well, we're doing menus right now. We just have a set of menus with items in them. It's like, how do we contextualize our own work? You know, it's like we are sitting here creating all this context for the game and all the things surrounding it, but what are we actually doing to bind our work together into a full software package for commercial use? And Plumber Depths kind of was like an eye-opener for us, where it's like, oh, that was what we were missing.
Right.
So before we head out of this, I also want to talk about the fact that, so Joe had this idea, and this was also early on when I joined. It was like, I want this package to look like a real bad CD-ROM experience from the 90s.
Yeah, so we talked about a handful of things, like we didn't want to try and make everything a joke.
Yeah.
Right? But there is one part that we all kind of universally relented on, and it was like, well, it shouldn't inherently be a joke. It is a joke, but we wanted it to look era appropriate to the industry that made this game, because so much of the story about the creation of this game is about the story of the birth of CD-ROM interactive media.
Yes.
Right? And so we wanted the package to fully encompass that. So every screen of this package was designed to, for better or worse, really accurately reflect what menu font style was like at the time. We have some, poor George had to code some of this stuff, but there's menu functionality in this that makes absolutely no sense. I recall, and we had a graphic designer put together the UI for this, and she is very talented, and so much of what we asked her to do was counterproductive to, her, or counterintuitive to her skills. She seemed a little nervous about this task. But some of the things I love, George, is we put together certain menus, and on our first pass, I was like, no. There's a problem here in some of these, because if you push right on the joystick, you know what direction the selector is going to go, and that's a problem, because that's not how it was. You should be, I was like, about 40% of the time when you push a direction on the D-pad or thumbstick, you should be unsure of where it's going to go. Is it going up and to the left? Is it going up and to the right? If you do hear any of what's going on in the background right now, it seems that...
we're just going out of business.
Yeah,
it's fine. We're just dismantling the company as we speak.
There's a van just driving through here, knocking ductwork out. We are conducting this commentary during a hurricane.
Yeah.
This makes me think of, for anyone who's out there playing... have you made the cat bark yet?
Oh, George. You gave a heavy hint there. Yeah, there are secrets in this menu. Because the menu, man, I didn't see it for a long time. Because as you mentioned, we work with an artist. Her name is Vivienne Ducharme. And she's very talented, very good. And we were basically asking her, like, do not use any of your talents.
It's shocking. I think maybe what was one of the funniest things about this package, and it's something that you don't get in the final package as the player, but the funniest thing about this package is almost how serious we took it.
Oh, absolutely.
So like every players will have no idea, but every menu. Do you guys remember? We've had meetings that went on for hours, an hour or longer, about like what options were on a screen. We would spend so much time in repeated meetings about these screens, about like this maybe funny bit we want to have on the screen, or like how the selection should look. All this different stuff. We spent so much time on every piece of the UI of this, and so many detailed conversations about what it's supposed to look like to get to, well, you've seen it now, what it is.
It's funny because we speak about this, and really the work and detail that went into that menu construction. There's a famous fighting game out there which has a lot of characters from different IPs in it, and the creator of that is always very meticulous about their menus. It's different for every iteration, and I think his wife is the one doing it. And I have to say that this is comparable to that legendary franchise because we spent just as much time ruining a menu as he has been constructing.
There were so many times that we went and we were like, no, this can be worse. But
that was the opening dialogue on every meeting with this could be worse. How do we get there?
Right. Well, and there's also something important to talk about. Not only could it be worse, but there's a line. And I had to very frequently kind of skirt that line and tell George when, and sometimes I crossed that line a few times, you made a career out of crossing that line. Where I came with very serious, like I give you like very bullet pointed, serious, articulated reasons about why a joke has now gone too far. It's now less funny.
It became those meetings became kind of like a crash course in comedy for you, George.
It was like we would have one typo in there, an intentional typo, and we would all die laughing. And then George would put one more in, and I'm like, George, we need to talk. You need to understand that you've now ruined the joke, and it's not funny anymore.
We are watching the credits here. We didn't really comment much on the game, but there is another commentary with actually Jeanne Basone where we talk about reaching out to her. We did get most of the surviving people involved either via phone, email, or with us in person. And Jeanne was an incredible asset to us. And really thanks to her, we could actually sit here today and do this commentary because she really injected life into this project. And we knew, man, we got something here thanks to her. Just an incredible person overall. But this was a lot of fun. It was a lot of memories for me. It's only been like a little bit over a year since we started, all three of us together.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say like the version of Plumbers Don't Wear Ties TBD title that you are playing right now, really from the point of this recording to when it started, was about a year.
It was about a year, yeah.
There were other iterations of it before then that would have been far lower scope that we changed our mind on. But this production, I'll say by the time it's done, probably a year and a half.
Yeah, I would say that is pretty accurate now. And then you take into consideration everything that went in before it.
Much longer than the original production of the game.
Much longer. The original production, I think they said, was about 4 or 5 weeks. So, but
just a little bit longer.
A little bit longer. Thanks, everyone, for picking this up and listening to us. And
Thank you.
See you in the other extras.
See ya.
Bye.
Hi, my name is Jane. We hardly know each other, but that's about to change. You're going to get to know a lot about me, maybe even more than you imagine. This whole thing's kind of like a blind date. I mean, here we are in your brand new Corvette, riding along the super information highway. Put your big muscular arm around me and whisper sweet things in my ear. And I promise to do whatever your little heart desires, but only if you make the right moves. Just imagine watching me get propositioned by my sleazeball boss. Why, you could even make me strip for him. But if you make the wrong moves, you could turn me into a nun. Imagine that. Me? A nun? Ha! I don't think so. But it's really all up to you. God knows what you'll do with that hot little mouse of yours. Point is, life's a game, and this game is full of life. You do right by me, and I guarantee I'll do right by you. But please don't turn me into a nun. I'm not that kind of girl. I've got a reputation. Around town, I'm known as Microwave Jane, because they say I heat up faster than any micro. And when the fire chief visited, he wrote up a new code and made me wear a smoke alarm between my thighs. And in the Coast Guard complained that I was creating tsunamis in my waterbed. And then the Pope visited, said I was the only person on earth that had been on my knees more times than he had. Now the president's filed a restraining order claiming I have a romantic interest in the Washington Monument. Oh, you men can be so vicious. Look at me. Just look at me. Do I look like that type of girl? Well, if you think I'm that type of girl, you got another thing coming, mister. Because I don't do one-night stands, I don't date musicians, and I don't roll over just because you bought in this game. Fair warning, I'll be resisting your every move and enjoying your every mistake. I trust it won't be the first time you made mistakes with the opposite sex. Now listen up, the rules of the game are real simple. You see, I meet this guy in a parking lot. Now you are supposed to identify with this guy. I mean, you in your own perverse, simple-minded way are supposed to be him. Got it? Now if you make the right moves, I end up with this schlep. That is, I end up with you. But if you get real lucky, you end up saving me from the bad guy. You become my hero. And as a hero's reward, guess what? You get to take me home and have your own degenerate little way with me. Of course, if you make the wrong move, you may just end up playing with your little mouse the rest of the night. It's all up to you. Are you game? Then come with me and you'll soon discover why plumbers never wear ties when I'm around.
Plumbers Don't Wear Ties. One of the most notorious video games ever made, which is even more crazy considering that most of the people who know about the game have never even played it. Here's the story about how it all came together and its surprisingly long legacy. Way back in 1976, Michael Anderson worked at an energy company in Boston. While there, he worked on the ARPANET, which was a very basic precursor to the internet. Years later, he founded a digital mapping company that was very lucrative. He sold the company and the buyout money gave him just enough currency to give him the free time to, as he says, get into trouble. At the time, movies were experimenting with different forms of interactivity. This would later culminate in something like Baumeister, the interactive movie where the audience could choose the outcome. Anyway, hearing about alternate storytelling gave Anderson an idea. He wanted to experiment with something on interactive stories. He had no intention of becoming a filmmaker or a game designer. He just wanted to try something new. Since he had the time and money, he figured, why not? He wanted to experiment with a story that had different outcomes that were dependent upon the user's choices. Kind of like those old choose-your-own-adventure books in video form. He thought about genres and ultimately decided to make the story revolve around a mindless rom-com, which would be the most cost-effective theme to make, since it wouldn't involve any special effects. Fueled by too much booze and weed, he wrote the script over the course of a few days. It was about a guy named John and a girl named Jane. The two meet up in a parking lot, and after a series of hijinks, they fall in love. If you make the right choices. The character of John is a plumber on a bike, and for some reason, he wears a tie. While writing it, the project didn't have a title. At the end of the script, Jane can't believe John's a plumber, and tells him, "Plumbers don't wear ties." Anderson decided that title was just silly enough for the production. Now with the script, he looked into how to get the game made. In the late 80s, early 90s, thanks to CDs, companies were figuring out exciting new things to do with this increase in storage space. We had light gun games like Mad Dog McCree, which were Laserdisc, and often had fairly decent-sized budgets. The arcade units were using dedicated hardware, and the video looked very crisp. Unfortunately, technology wasn't there yet for home units, and often what looked great in arcades was very low-res and pixelated on PCs and consoles. Anderson was looking into doing a full-motion video game, but decided most people wouldn't have been able to play it back then, since the average computer wouldn't have been able to handle it. There were some games like The Seventh Guest that spent hundreds of thousands of dollars and years of development time to get to where the video footage was still pixelated and low resolution. The average CD-ROM transfer rate had to be 125 kilobytes per second. That's trivial by today's standards, but back then, it was more than most. The speed was just too slow to show full-screen motion video, so the videos usually only filled a small fraction of the screen. Another problem was CD-ROM video storage. A CD-ROM could only hold 640 megabytes. They tested and tried, but with what they wanted to do, it just wasn't feasible to make the game with full-motion video. This wasn't a major company who had endless resources and tech guys who could work on compression and other facets. This was a small, indie project that really was being made as an experiment. Anderson decided instead of full motion video to make the game as a series of still images. That was the only way they could guarantee the game would run on an ordinary CD-ROM. With the concept for the game and the script in place, he started to look into casting. Not being a casting person, or having any ties to Hollywood, he would just go talk to potential actors, told them what he was doing, and asked if they'd like to be involved. One day he walked into a restaurant in Glendale, California for lunch and was stunned. They were doing a lingerie show, and there was one girl who stood out from the rest. Jeanne Basone. Anderson knew she'd be the it girl. He approached her and asked if she'd be interested in acting in this video game project. She enthusiastically said sure. Jeanne had already been acting for years as Hollywood, one of the original gorgeous ladies of wrestling. She also appeared on a few TV shows like Saved by the Bell and Married with Children. With the it girl Jane hired, Anderson continued to scout around looking for cast members. Most of the people he asked agreed to be in the game. He then asked them if they had any family or friends who'd be interested. He even hired a few of his own friends to be involved. After a few rounds of this, he had his cast. Anderson filmed the production in the summer of 1993 in Glendale, California. Since the budget was low, he didn't bother getting filming permits, especially considering they were just going to be taking a bunch of pictures. The exterior locations they did without permission. They were pretty quick. They would just show up, have the actors get into their poses, and shoot. By the time anyone even realized what they were doing, they were gone. They didn't have to worry about the sound since that would all be added in post. The interiors, on the other hand, were places they were able to get permission to shoot. Thresher's office was in the Arco building in downtown Los Angeles. The director's sister was an executive there, so she arranged for them to shoot the scenes there on a Sunday when no one was at work. The photo shoots went off mostly without a hitch. They'd get weird looks from the locals when they showed up to shoot a scene, especially for the end chase sequence, where Jeanne is half undressed running away from Thresher. They shot the entirety of the pictures in about 5 to 7 days on weekends. Afterwards, they picked the photos they wanted and worked on recording the audio. They didn't have access to a recording studio, so they recorded most of the audio in a parking lot. Anderson recorded his segments in his living room. Keeping with the theme of all this just being a fun experiment, John flubbed a line, and Anderson decided to just leave it in.
I've been searching for you.
Freudian slip?
I'm going to keep that in the script.
When putting together the end chase sequence, there ended up being a ton of continuity errors with Jeanne's clothing, but they were intentional. When she escapes the building, she isn't wearing her jacket. Then she's outside and it's back on, and she's running away and it's off again. They admittedly wanted to show off Jeanne's body because they figured that was what the potential audience would want. Jeanne was in great shape and she was quite proud to show off what she had. Beyond that, they left the continuity errors in there because it made the game sillier. They had Jane stopping to snap pictures with the locals, John's taking a phone call, and so forth. They tried to make it clear that they weren't even remotely taking any of this seriously. Anderson hired a friend of his to do the music for the game. He wanted the intro to be fun to match the rock music soundtrack. He was able to talk to the folks who ran the Saugus Speedway in Santa Clarita, California, who allowed him to use photographs of the location for the game. One of the cast members worked for Capitol Records. Anderson wanted to use one good song from Capitol's library to accompany all the cheesy music he had in the game. He had a meeting with a high-ranking executive who was furious at the prospect of having a record transferred to digital media. He screamed, saying this would be the end of the recording industry. If they did this, people could and would just copy the damn music and give it away. He ended the meeting telling him that hell would freeze over before he would put anything from Capitol on digital media. A few years later, hell froze over. Anyway, after matching up the audio and the images, they added some very primitive graphical overlays. They then had the game programmed, which took about 2 weeks. It was developed by United Pictures and published under Unica. The game was quietly released on DOS later in 1993. It was a very, very limited release, and flew under most people's radar. PC Gamer gave it possibly the lowest score they ever awarded a game. They gave it a 3 out of 100. They called it a pseudo-pornographic photo story with the wit and charm of an elephant's arse. That pretty much would have been the end of the experiment, except this happened. The Fremont, California-based company Kieran Entertainment contacted Anderson. They wanted to port the game to the 3DO console. It seemed that it was really cheap to get a game on the system. The relatively new company 3DO was trying to get developers to put games on their very expensive console. The 3DO launched with a whopping $699 price tag, which dropped to $499 6 months later. In order to survive in this very competitive market, they needed games. They began enticing publishers to put their games on the system by offering a very low royalty rate. If you put a game on the 3DO, they took a cut of $3 per game sold, which was a much better deal than what Sega or Nintendo were offering. It was rumored Sega was charging $13 per game sold, while Nintendo was $15 per game sold. The system also had very loose restrictions on content, which was how a variety of porn games ended up on the console. The 3DO had better hardware than the PCs where they first tested the game, so it'd be able to handle some full-motion video. Kieran wanted to spice the game up a little more, so they paid to add a short full-motion video sequence in the beginning of the game with Jeanne talking to the player as her character. Anderson wrote the dialogue for Jeanne to deliver in this new intro. If you entered a code, Jeanne's outfit would switch to lingerie, and it removed the censors in the intro. The DOS version had the nudity unlocked by default. The intro would be the only full-motion video segment in the entire game. Anderson signed a long-term contract with Kieran for them to have the exclusive rights to the 3DO market. With the game being released on the 3DO, it gathered a lot more attention and made many Worst of the Year lists. It was called a PowerPoint presentation sold as a game. Most of the people playing the 3DO version were confused as to why only the opening scene was in full-motion video. They had no idea this was an entirely new segment on a slideshow DOS game. Still, with the high price tag of the 3DO, most mainstream gamers never even heard of the game, let alone played it. Considering this was just a little experiment for the director, he never intended on making a sequel. He and the people working on it had fun, and that was that. The records of the budget and payment are all long gone, so no one has any idea how much this whole thing cost. Anderson said all he remembers is that it was fairly cheap. Jeanne said that while she doesn't remember the exact number, she said the actors were all well paid for their time. The game did exactly what Anderson wanted, which was just to make and release his experiment. It gained some attention for its lack of quality, but quickly faded into obscurity. Flash forward ahead to the year 2009. James the Angry Video Game Nerd did an episode on Plumbers Don't Wear Ties. Needless to say, he didn't like it.
This is one of the worst things I have ever seen in my life.
He deconstructed the game in his usual style, which brought a massive amount of attention to the game. This was a video goofing on this little slideshow game that, as of currently, has been viewed close to 10 million times. This brought the game the most attention it ever received up to this point. People who never even heard of this game before were now joining in the chorus of screaming how this was the worst game of all time. Although to be fair, they probably would be saying the same thing if they did actually play it. Meanwhile, Mike Anderson had no idea this was going on. He had long since moved on, and Plumbers was just a footnote in his life that he had forgotten about. I spoke to him and told him about James's video. He watched it and laughed, saying that some people were taking this way too seriously. This was just something he did as a goof decades ago. His intention was to see if he could make a game, and he not only succeeded at that, but was able to get it released on 2 different platforms. The tale doesn't stop there. In 2017, a Reddit user going by Psychotic Giraffe discovered the game had a small PC release. He looked for it on Google, but only found links to the 3DO version. He eventually found the WorldCat database listing of all library inventories that showed 1 copy existed in all of its 72,000 libraries across the world. He discovered that Ball State University's library, the Alexander M. Bracken Library, still had a copy of the elusive Plumbers Don't Wear Ties PC version. He didn't live in Indiana, so he asked if any of the locals on Reddit could get the disc to him. One local user offered to help and sent him the disc. He was able to get the game running on an old Compaq Armada. Wanting to share his discovery, he ripped the files and set up a DOSBox emulator configuration that could run the game on modern machines. He then uploaded it to the Internet Archive, which is where you can still find it. Now we go slightly ahead to November of 2020. Josh from Limited Run Games contacted Mike Anderson and was overjoyed when he responded. He told Mike he'd been trying to find a way to contact him for 4 years. Josh is one of the game's mega fans, and since the Kieran contract expired a long time ago, Limited Run was able to acquire the rights to release the game on modern platforms. So now, one of the most notorious and often hated games of all time is coming to PC, PlayStation 4 and 5, Xbox, and Nintendo Switch. Plumbers Don't Wear Ties, the definitive edition. I still can't believe it. This'll be an enhanced version that'll look and sound better than it ever has. Well, look and sound about as good as it possibly can. James is even in the special edition talking about his episode. Mike was shocked to find the game had a cult following. That made him happy. He said he hadn't thought about plumbers for literally 2 decades until Limited Run contacted him. He said it shows there's still some people out there with a sense of humor. After the game, Jeanne continued to act and is now a professional stunt woman. She said because of the game resurfacing on the internet, she's had a few fans recognize her from the game. She's also still wrestling and has her own wrestling production company. When not doing any of that, she often appears at Comic-Cons and wrestling panels all over the US. In 2019, she launched Hollywood Botanica, her own line of natural artisan soaps and pet shampoo bars. Since most of the cast wasn't actors, they just returned to whatever jobs they were doing before the game. Although Edward J. Fasulo, who at the time went by the name Edward J. Foster, briefly returned to acting for the 2001 film Visions of Sugar Plums, which is probably more embarrassing than his role in Plumbers. He doesn't have any more credits after that. Plumbers Don't Wear Ties is seriously a game I love. I recognize that it's bad, but for some reason, it resonates with me. I would never in good conscience recommend it to someone as a good game, but at the very least, I would tell them to watch a Let's Play. Believe me, I fully understand why people don't like this. It's not even a game per se. It's a visual novel that's told through still pictures instead of anime characters. When asked about the game, Mike said, Plumbers was a one-off, personal, and wacky experiment for me. Most people take the game, and themselves, far too seriously. From the very get-go, it was designed to be a silly project that doesn't fit into any category. The all-too-serious reviewers actually crack me up. Mike's happy the game still generates interest. He was also shocked when he was contacted by Limited Run. I asked him what happened to the tie, and he's not sure. He said either Ed, the actor who played John, kept it, or it ended up at Goodwill. So just think, someone else out there might have worn the tie. Maybe even a plumber.
John, plumbers don't wear ties. Now come on, stop fooling around. I just sat down and blew my little head off until...
Take your damn clothes off!
I want to take a moment to thank 2 people who made this all possible. My friend John Shapanek, who got me in touch with Jeanne Basone, and also got me in touch with Josh from Limited Run, who then got me in touch with Mike Anderson. Seriously, guys, thank you. My experience with the game is different than most. In the early 1990s, I heard about the game, weirdly enough, from a video game magazine about the turbo graphics. They gave it a scathing review and told everyone not to even think about playing the game, let alone buying it. This, of course, meant that I needed to get it immediately. I went to one of my local GameStops and picked up the game for the 3DO. I took it to the counter and the guy working there refused to sell it to me. He told me the game was horrible and essentially repeated many of the things that were stated in the magazine. He said, "This is everything that's wrong with video games. This is Plumbers Don't Wear Ties." I told him I didn't care. I wanted it. He said he couldn't in good conscience sell it to me. He said if I really wanted it, I'd have to walk out of the store, walk back in and ask for it, which I did. I bought the game for $20 and I wasn't disappointed. It's something that, despite its lack of quality, has stayed with me for a very long time. I don't know why, but this game is just special to me. I have a small list of Holy Grail episodes that I've been wanting to do, and this one was near the top. You don't know how happy this makes me.